What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is a story where Issei was the vessel of the legendary Dark Knight, Sparda. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 2. 2 days later. Japan, Kuoh Academy, time. 6:27 p.m. It had been 2 days since the incident in Grigori and the attack beneath the sewers of Lucifer City. Vergil, who had suffered grievous injuries during his battle against Issei, was still in a coma, slowly recovering under the watch of Grigori's best healers. Meanwhile, Kuoh Academy had suspended its classes for 2 days under the guise of renovations, but in reality, it was merely a cover-up. Behind closed doors, a secret meeting had been convened among the faction leaders to discuss the catastrophic events that had unfolded in a single night. The meeting hall was filled with some of the most powerful beings in existence. Seated at the table were the Devil King Serzich's Lucifer, accompanied by his wife Graphia Lucifuge, Seraphol Leviathan, and Ajuka Beelzebub. Across from them sat Michael, the leader of the angels, while the fallen angels were represented by Shemhazai, alongside the former Governor General, Azazel. The Yaokai faction's leaders, Yasaka of the East Yaokai and Nararian of the West Yaokai, were not present, having other urgent matters to attend to. However, the other pantheons made their presence known. Odin, the Allfather of the Norse, was accompanied by his trusted Valkyrie, Roswis. From the Greek pantheon, Zeus, the king of the gods, attended the meeting, accompanied by his daughter, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. And as for Shiva, the god of destruction, represented the Hindu pantheon, was absent as he had other matters to attend. With all the necessary figures gathered, the silence in the room was finally broken. Serzich's. I believe it is time we discuss the current situation we are facing. Shemhazai, please elaborate. Shemhazai gave a tired sigh, standing as he waved his hand, summoning a magic projection that displayed all the evidence regarding the two incidents. The projection flickered to life, showing the Grigori base in the underworld being raided by a single individual. Shemhazai. 2 nights ago, one of our bases in the underworld was infiltrated and attacked by a single person. And, coincidentally, he turned his gaze towards the assembled leaders. Shemhazai. That same individual was responsible for the attack on the Devil Scouts in Kobe. With another wave of his hand, the projection shifted, now displaying the assailant in action, a crimson-coated figure, tearing through the facility's defenses like a walking calamity. The next image showed a vicious battle between this individual and Vergil. The muzzle flashes of Coyote and the blazing energy of the gauntlet and greaves of Drag lit up the battlefield as the projection played out their intense fight. As soon as Issei's face became visible in the projection, a certain Redeed clenched her fists in fury. Akeno could feel her blood boiling. Her father, the man who had raised and trained her, was in a coma because of him. She wanted nothing more than to make him pay. Shemhazai continued. Shemhazai. As you can see, this man is responsible for Vergil's current condition. But that isn't the worst part. The projection shifted once more, this time, showing a massive demonic sword resting on a pedestal, its aura radiating raw power. Shemhazai. During his raid, he managed to steal one of the most dangerous relics in history. The Rebellion. The moment that name was spoken, the entire room fell into a stunned silence. Then, Zeus. He what? A thunderous crackle erupted from the king of the gods, his fist sparking with divine electricity as he processed what had just been revealed. One of the 5 relics of Sparda, one of the Dark Knight's most powerful weapons, had fallen into the hands of the very man they all hated. And worse, he was worthy to wield it. The next image displayed Issei in his rebellion devil trigger form. The raw demonic power pouring from his transformed state made some of the weaker members in the room visibly tense. And then came the final revelation. Shemhazai. To make things even worse. The man responsible for all of this. He paused, glancing around the room. Shemhazai. Is none other than the former pillar, Issei Hyoudou. The reaction was instant. Anger. Disbelief. Denial. Those were the emotions that the entire Grimoire experienced after finding out he was alive. Especially Akeno, since he was the one responsible for her father's injuries. Dai was the first to slam his hand against the table after finding out that it was his brother that is still alive, standing up in rage. Dai. Impossible. There's no way it's him. He died in Greece. His outburst was met with only a sigh from Shemhazai. Shemhazai. Vergil confirmed it himself before he fell into a coma. With another wave of his hand, the projection changed once more. This time, it displayed a woman, a seductive, almost ghostly figure, draped in shadows and crackling with purple lightning. Shemhazai. And if that wasn't enough, he freed one of the biggest threats sealed away long ago. The Thunder Succubus, Neven. The moment her name was spoken, the Devil Kings tensed. A powerful figure from Sparda's era, now walking free once more. Catalan, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. Catalan. This isn't just about Issei anymore. Her golden eyes hardened as she gazed at the projection. Catalan. This is about a new age. A new age of chaos that will soon rise up. Her words sent a wave of unease through the room. The faction leaders exchanged wary glances, their minds racing at the implications. A new age of chaos. Was this another branch of the Chaos Brigade? Another rebellion seeking to plunge the world into war? Serziches leaned forward, his crimson eyes narrowing. Serziches. Catalan Oidian, please elaborate further. Catalan took a deep breath, steadied herself, then exhaled. She opened her eyes, now fully prepared to explain. Catalan. During my investigation, the sacred tunnel beneath Lucifer City was breached by a squad of strays. However, they were not affiliated with the Chaos Brigade. One of them spoke of a new age for the righteous ruler of the underworld. Meaning. Her golden eyes hardened. Catalan. Someone is planning to overthrow the Devil Kings. The room fell deathly silent. Even among gods and kings, this was an alarming revelation. A coup. Again. It was all too familiar. The echoes of past rebellions resurfaced in their minds, the faction wars, the rise and fall of false rulers, the endless cycle of power struggles. And yet. This time, something felt different. Catalan. Not just the underworld. She clenched her fists. Catalan. But the entire universe. That's what they said. The tension in the room deepened. The Devil Kings exchanged silent glances, their expressions dark. Even Zeus and Shiva, both known for their calm indifference, looked more intrigued than before. Catalan. Their supposed lord behind the attack is named Pexinox. He or she sent those strays to infiltrate the sacred tunnel in an attempt to retrieve one of the 5 relics of Sparda, to which they ultimately cancelled for unknown reasons. The 5 relics of Sparda. This made the Gremory peerage pause in confusion. Who was Sparda? Riaz turned to her queen, Akeno, who seemed just as perplexed. The others, Kiba, Kaneko, and Gasper, also showed no sign of recognition. Except for one person. Ingvild Leviathan. Her violet eyes flickered with something, an old memory, perhaps. She had heard that name before. But before she could speak, Riaz stepped forward. Riaz. Excuse me, but who exactly is Sparda? We've never heard of a devil by that name in any historical records. Her voice was firm but curious. Sona adjusted her glasses, her analytical mind already searching for a connection. Sona. Riaz, have you forgotten the fairy tale we used to read as children? The legendary Dark Knight. Her eyes narrowed slightly, shifting back to Catalan. Sona. Tell me, Miss Catalan, what does Sparda have to do with these 2 incidents to begin with? At this, Serziches exchanged a glance with the other Devil Kings. Ajuka, who had remained quiet until now, closed his eyes and nodded. Even Serafal, usually playful and energetic, gave a solemn nod of agreement. It was time. The younger generation, their sisters, their heirs, their future rulers needed to know the truth. Serziches sighed before speaking. Serziches. Riaz, Sona, and everyone else in your respective peerages. What I am about to tell you is something deeply connected to our future. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Serziches. Now that we are on the verge of peace. It is time you all learn the truth. A slow dread began to creep into the room. Serziches. The Dark Knight Sparda, the figure from the fairy tale, is not a myth. The peerage's eyes widened. A fairy tale. Was real. Serziches. His existence was covered up for a reason. Because long ago, he was one of the strongest beings to have ever lived. He let that fact settle. Then. Serziches. And during the Great War between the biblical factions. He perished. But before his death, his power was divided into 5 relics, each one carrying a fragment of his immense strength. The room felt heavier with each revelation. The 5 relics of Sparda. Catalan spoke next. Catalan. The first relic is the Force Edge. Under the hands of the devil factions. She waved her hand, summoning a projection of a massive ancient blade. Catalan. It is said to contain the dormant essence of Sparda's true power. A weapon overflowing with demonic energy, even greater than the rebellion. However, it remains inactive, waiting for the right wielder to awaken it. The projection changed, displaying a long crimson sword. Catalan. The second relic. Is the rebellion. The Devil Kings and faction leaders tensed, already knowing what came next. Catalan. A blade capable of withstanding any attack due to its immense demonic magic. It is similar to the Force Edge, though not as powerful. However, the rebellion has a unique trait. She turned to look at the projection of Issei Hyoudou. Catalan. It unites man and devil. The air in the room grew thicker. They all had seen firsthand what that sword had done to Issei. And what he had become. Catalan continued, shifting the projection to a slender katana. Catalan. The third relic. Is the Yamato. The image of the black-bladed sword pulsed with an otherworldly aura. Catalan. Unlike the rebellion, which unites, the Yamato is said to separate man from devil. It can cut through anything, even dimensions themselves. The bad thing is that it was snapped in half due to an incident many years ago. Sona's brows furrowed. A sword capable of cutting through anything. Even reality. Catalan moved to the fourth relic. A pair of intricately designed amulets. Catalan. The fourth relic. Is 2 amulets. Together, they contain the majority of Sparda's magic. It is said that with them, one could wield power beyond comprehension. And then. Silence. The projection remained blank. Catalan turned back to the room. Catalan. The 5th relic. Is still unknown. A murmur spread through the room. An unknown relic. Even the Devil Kings looked uncertain. Surziches exhaled. Surziches. For centuries, we believed these relics will never be stolen. But now. He turned toward the image of Issei's rebellion devil trigger form. Surziches. At least one of them had been stolen, and the other one was almost. And with them. A new war was on the horizon. Riaz. Why was his existence kept a secret? Why was Sparda's existence hidden from history to begin with? Her tone carried a mix of curiosity and frustration. If Sparda had been such an important figure, why was he erased from the records? Surziches sighed, already expecting this question. Surziches. Well, Riaz. My predecessors, those who held the title of Lucifer before me along with the other faction leaders, decided to bury the truth of Sparda's existence, as well as the existence of his relics. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. Surziches. Take the events of 2 nights ago as an example. If knowledge of Sparda's relics had been made public, the world would have been thrown into chaos long ago. Countless individuals, organizations, and even entire factions would have fought for control over them, seeking their power for their own selfish desires. Wars would have erupted. The balance of power among the factions would have shattered beyond repair. Riaz frowned, processing his words. Surziches. To prevent such a catastrophe, Sparda's existence was erased from history, turned into a mere fairy tale, a legend. Only a select few were entrusted with the truth. The room remained silent, heavy with the weight of this revelation. Catalan, standing with her arms crossed, let out a small sigh before turning her sharp golden eyes toward Riaz and Sona. Catalan. I know what you're both thinking, where were the relics kept all this time? And as for the 5th relic, its location, or even its exact nature, is still unknown. She straightened her posture before continuing. Catalan. The Yamato was entrusted to the Vatican. More specifically. Her eyes flicked toward Michael, the leader of Heaven's forces. Catalan. It was under the command of Lord Michael himself. However, due to an incident, the blade was damaged beyond repair. Michael nodded solemnly, confirming the statement. Michael. It was a necessary action to prevent its power from being abused. Though I regret its destruction, it was the only course we could take at the time. Sona adjusted her glasses, her analytical mind already working through the implications. Sona. And what of the 4th relic? The amulets. Catalan's expression darkened slightly. Catalan. The 2 amulets were kept separately for safety. The first was held by the Pendragon family. But due to an incident, it went missing. She then gestured toward the Greek faction's representatives. Catalan. The 2nd amulet is in the hands of Hephaestus, the god of the forge. A murmur spread through the room. The god of the forge himself had been entrusted with safeguarding a piece of Sparda's power. Zeus, hearing this, let out a low hum of thought. Zeus. Yes, young Catalan, Hephaestus has been safeguarding a fragment of Sparda's magic. Athena, standing beside her father, narrowed her eyes. Athena. Then the amulets are not just simple artifacts. If they contain a majority of Sparda's magic, then in the wrong hands. She didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone in the room understood. If someone collected all 5 relics, what kind of power would they be able to wield? Irina. Wait, Lord Michael, the Vatican had the Yamato in their hands. Forgive me for my behavior, but how come I never heard of it? Her voice carried a mix of disbelief and frustration. If something as legendary as Sparda's Yamato had been in the Vatican's possession, how had she, a devout warrior of the church, never known? Zenobia stepped forward, her arms crossed as she added to Irina's demand for answers. Zenobia. Lord Michael, we need an explanation for this. Even Asia, usually quiet in such meetings, looked to Michael with curiosity. Michael turned his gaze toward his warriors, fully aware that they deserved an explanation. Michael. Well, you see, girls. As Surziches mentioned earlier, the existence of Sparda and his relics was erased from supernatural history to prevent catastrophe. If word had spread of their existence, countless factions, rogue groups, and power-hungry individuals would have fought for control over them. He paused, allowing his words to settle before continuing. Michael. And yes, the Yamato was under the care of the Vatican. More specifically, it was kept in the United Kingdom, in a city named after one of the Vatican's finest priests and exorcists, Redgrave City, named after Tony Redgrave. The church trio widened their eyes in shock. They all recognized that name. Tony Redgrave was a legend among exorcists, a warrior who fought with unwavering faith, said to have once faced a demon invasion single-handedly. However, he had perished in an incident years ago, leaving behind his legacy and his nephew, Karl Redgrave, as the city's current priest. Asia clasped her hands together, eyes filled with admiration. Asia. From what I know, the current priest of Redgrave City is none other than Father Karl Redgrave. He is well known for providing shelter to the homeless and orphans, donating to charities, and helping those in need. He gives orphans the choice to join the Vatican as exorcists or live normal lives. Irina nodded, her expression softening with nostalgia. Irina. I met Karl when I was younger. I remember him teaching me how to wield a weapon for the first time. He is a kind-hearted man, Asia-chan. Truly an inspiration for future generations of exorcists. Michael chuckled, sensing the warmth in his ace's words. Michael. Indeed, Karl Redgrave is one of the Vatican's finest. His devotion to the faith and his selflessness have made him a pillar of inspiration for the new generation. He then shifted his tone back to the serious matter at hand. Michael. Back to the main topic. Father Karl is currently in charge of safeguarding the broken Yamato, with hopes of one day repairing it. This revelation sent murmurs through the room. If the Vatican had actively been attempting to restore the Yamato, it meant they still considered its power invaluable. Before the discussion could continue, Serziches stepped in, his tone firm and commanding. Serziches. Now that we've covered that matter, Lord Michael, we still have much more to discuss. First, we must address the so-called Lord of the Stray Devils. A being known as Pexinox. A visible tension spread through the room at the mention of the name. Serziches. We do not yet know which of the original Satans he is a descendant of. But one thing is certain, he is not to be taken lightly. His influence has been growing in the shadows, and the events of the past few days prove that he is finally making his move. The weight of his words hung in the air, but before anyone could respond, Serzich's expression darkened even further as he shifted to the next, more personal subject. Serziches. And then. There is the matter of the former pillar, Issei Hyoudou. A palpable wave of anger spread through the room at the mere mention of his name. Serziches. That disgrace not only managed to injure Barakiel, but he also stole the rebellion. Gasps of disbelief and outrage echoed across the room. Some clenched their fists, others grit their teeth in barely restrained fury. Serziches. To make matters worse. The sword accepted him as its wielder. That last sentence sent chills through the council. For a relic as powerful as the rebellion, a blade meant to unite man and devil. To acknowledge him as its owner meant that Issei wasn't just wielding it. He had been chosen by it. For many, this was the worst possible scenario. Zeus's fingers crackled with faint arcs of lightning as he spoke in a low, thunderous growl. Zeus. That damn fraud. Not only did he survive, but he dares to claim one of Sparda's blade. Seraphol crossed her arms, her usual playful demeanor absent. Seraphol. It doesn't matter what that sword thinks. We'll reclaim it from that unworthy scum. The tension in the room only grew heavier. The reality was clear. Issei Hyoudou wasn't just alive, he was a threat. And if he truly intended to wield Sparda's power, then he might become something far worse than any of them had anticipated. The room had fallen into a heavy silence before Azazel finally broke it. Azazel. If we're all just going to stand here and do nothing, we're only making things worse. We need to reclaim the rebellion as quickly as possible. We have no idea what that scum plans to do with it. Serziches nodded, acknowledging the truth in Azazel's words. Serziches. You are right, Azazel. We cannot afford to sit idly by while Issei wields such power. That is why I intend to send Riaz, her peerage, along with Roswis and Lord Michael's ace, Irina Hyoudou. And our pillar, Dai, to reclaim the blade from that disgrace. Azazel narrowed his eyes at Serziches in disbelief. Auden just nods, as he knew sending a group of high schoolers isn't enough, even with Dai, as they cannot underestimate the rebellion's gift to Issei. Maybe Roswis's magic may aid them. Azazel. Serziches, are you seriously suggesting that? I mean. He took down Barakiel. Are you really sure sending them is enough? Serziches hesitated for a moment, but his resolve remained firm. Serziches. You may have a point, Azazel. But based on the young ones' experience facing past threats, I believe they can take him down and reclaim the blade. And if not. His gaze turned sharp. Serziches. We will continue to pursue him and take it back by force. Michael, who had been deep in thought, suddenly spoke up. Michael. If the worst comes to pass and Ria's team fails, I know of one exorcist who could serve as our last resort. She is the ward of Father Karl Redgrave, his most talented disciple and, in all likelihood, his adoptive daughter. Her name is EVA Redgrave, also known as the Red Scarf Exorcist. A wave of recognition passed through the room. Zenobia and Irina, in particular, tensed at the mention of her name. They knew exactly who EVA Redgrave was. Even among the Vatican's finest, she stood at the pinnacle of exorcists. Her mastery of magic and swordsmanship was unparalleled, a prodigy raised under the direct guidance of one of the church's most respected warriors. Compared to her, Zenobia and Irina had always felt as if they were standing in her shadow. Still, despite their unease, they remained determined. They had to believe in themselves. They would take down Issei and reclaim the rebellion without needing EVA to intervene. Serziches folded his hands together, considering Michael's words carefully before nodding. Serziches, very well then, Lord Michael. If all else fails, EVA may be our last resort. But let us not hope it comes to that. Riaz, I entrust you this task as your older brother to reclaim the rebellion in one piece. Whether if the former pillar is dead or alive. Riaz just nods as she listened to her brother's order. As the discussion continued, the faction leaders debating their next steps, but amidst it all, one individual remained silent. Dai. Though his face remained neutral, his mind was filled with a storm of thoughts. Thoughts that bordered on something far darker than mere duty. Inside Dai's mind, a sinister realization took root. Dai. If the rebellion granted my disgrace of a brother such immense demonic power, then what of the Force Edge? His fingers twitched slightly, his pulse quickening at the thought. Dai. And what if the Yamato were to be repaired? His lips curled into a subtle smirk, his thoughts dripping with greed and malice. Dai. Just wait, dear brother. I will plunge you back onto where you belong. Japan, Kobe. Bloodwraith Safe House. Issei's office. 7:13 p.m. Inside Issei's office, the air smelled of pepperoni and melted cheese. The dim lighting cast a faint glow over the room, reflecting off the various documents and weapons scattered across his desk. Sitting in his chair, shirtless, his toned upper body exposed, Issei lazily chewed on a slice of pizza. His white hair was down, slightly messy, giving him an unbothered, almost careless look. Then, without warning, the office door swung open. Niven stepped inside, the rhythmic click of her heels echoing through the room. She was wearing a sleek fashionable outfit paired with sunglasses, but as soon as she approached Issei's desk, she casually pulled them off, revealing her striking golden eyes. She leaned forward, placing her hands on the desk, her gaze locked onto him. Issei, still mid-bite, smirked. Issei. So, did you finally land a job here in the human world? I did recommend you to try modeling. Or maybe even. His smirk widened. Issei. A stripper. BZZZT. The flash of purple lightning shot from Niven's fingertips, striking the slice of pizza in Issei's hand. It instantly disintegrated into fine dust, crumbling to the floor in a sad pile of what once was his dinner. Issei blinked, his deadpan expression unchanged. Niven. Do you seriously think I'd accept that second recommendation, Issei? Or should I say, back in the old days, Sparda? She folded her arms, huffing dramatically. Niven. I would never expose my body to anyone, except for my glorious knight, which is you. Do you have any idea how much it hurts my feelings that you would suggest such a degrading job for me? A prostitution-level job. Issei let out a sigh, rubbing the bridge of his nose. This woman. A simp. A gooner. And a flirt. All wrapped up in one ridiculous lightning-wielding package. As if to rub salt in the wound, he reached for the last slice of pizza in the box. But before he could grab it. Snatch. Niven, still pouting, grabbed it first. She took a deliberate, slow bite, chewing while glaring at him, her cheek slightly puffed. Issei just stared at her, a single sweat drop forming on his forehead. This woman was really something else. Niven leaned in closer, her smirk dripping with mischief as she crossed her arms under her chest. The dim light from the room's lamps reflected in her emerald eyes, giving them a sinister glow. Niven. Tell me, Spock-hun, did Kenji pay you properly for retrieving that lowly crow's arm? Or do I need to zap his testicles with my thunder to remind him where he stands? Her voice was laced with sadistic amusement, but there was an underlying seriousness in her tone. She meant every word. If Kenji had even thought of underpaying Issei, she'd make sure he wouldn't be able to father children anytime soon. Issei sighed, his third sweat drop forming one for her nickname choice, one for her sadistic tendencies, and one for the mental image of Kenji screaming in agony. He slumped back into his chair, stretching slightly before answering. Issei. Hey, no need for that, Niven. He already paid me while you were away. Niven narrowed her eyes, still not fully convinced. Issei. 35 million yen at first, but after I swiped a little something extra a document from Grigori it shot up by 7%. That bumped the final payment to 250 million yen. Could have been more, but I was feeling generous. He smirked, reclining in his chair, looking rather pleased with himself. Niven. A document, you say? My, Spock-hun, always so sneaky. She took another slow bite of his pizza, chewing thoughtfully. Niven. Still, you should have taken more. Perhaps some of their swords are artifacts. Something worthy of your strength. With all that power, you could demand anything from those pathetic factions. Issei chuckled, shaking his head. Issei. Thought about it. But let's be honest, taking the rebellion was already enough to send those bureaucrats into a panic. Any more, and they might start foaming at the mouth. Niven let out a sultry laugh, licking a stray bit of sauce from her lips before grinning. Niven. Oh, how I wish I could see their expressions right now. Their horror. Their despair. She leaned in even closer, her voice dropping into a whisper. Niven. You're playing with fire, Issei. And I love it. Issei smirked again, resting his chin on his hand as he met her gaze. Issei. Oh, I know. But that's what makes it fun, doesn't it? The two shared a knowing look, one of mutual understanding, of chaos yet to come. Issei then stood up from his desk chair and made his way toward a small fridge tucked in the corner of his office. With a casual motion, he pulled the door open, revealing an overwhelming sight: stacks upon stacks of Diet Coke cans neatly packed inside. Diet Coke in the freezer. Diet Coke in the chiller. Diet Coke everywhere. It was practically a shrine dedicated to his favorite drink. Without hesitation, he reached in and grabbed a single can, the cool condensation already forming against his fingertips. With a smooth flick of his thumb, he popped the tab open, the faint PSST sound echoing through the room. Bringing the can to his lips, he took a refreshing sip before lowering it, savoring the crisp taste. Issei. You'll always be my top priority, you know that. His crimson eyes flickered toward Niven, a small smirk forming on his lips. Issei. Hey Niven. If you're thirsty after your little trip, feel free to grab a can. There's plenty to go around. His tone was casual, but the way he gestured toward the fridge made it clear he took his Diet Coke stash very seriously. Niven raised an eyebrow as she watched Issei casually open the fridge. Her amusement quickly turned into disbelief as she took in the sheer absurdity of its contents. Niven. You can't be serious. Stacks upon stacks of Diet Coke filled every possible space, crammed into the chiller, stuffed into the freezer, stacked neatly along the shelves. It was a monument of carbonated artificial sweetness. Niven crossed her arms, leaning against the desk while watching him with a mix of disbelief and amusement. Niven. I swear, for a man who defeated the tyrant Devil King, you have the most bizarre priorities. Issei simply shrugged before gesturing toward the fridge with his can. Issei. Hey, Niven, come on, just try it out, it won't be that bad. Niven scoffed, flipping her hair back as she walked toward the fridge. Niven. TCH. I prefer wine. But I suppose I'll humor you just this once. She opened the fridge, staring at the overwhelming sea of silver and red cans. Niven. You definitely have a problem. Issei just smirked at her response. Issei. Nah. I have a lifestyle. Issei barely had time to react as he attempts to take sip from the Diet Coke can before a crimson magic circle flared to life beside him, its glow casting sharp shadows across the room. The insignia of the Grimoire peerage burned into the air, signaling only one thing: an ambush. Before he could even reach for his weapon, three figures emerged from the portal, their movement swift and precise. Irina was the first to strike. Without hesitation, she manifested a holy light-based sword and drove it deep into his left side, her expression filled with determination. Zenobia followed suit, summoning a magic circle to call forth Exterandal, the massive holy blade gleaming in her grip. She wasted no time, stabbing Issei on his right, the force of her attack making his muscles tense with pain. Kiba, ever the swift knight, activated his sacred gear sword birth. Twin blades formed in his hands, and in the blink of an eye, he was upon Issei, his speed overwhelming. With a sharp calculated slash, he severed the tendons in Issei's knees, forcing him to buckle. As Issei fell to one knee, Kiba delivered the final blow, stabbing him straight through the chest, pinning him in place like a captured beast. And then, from above, a sinister presence loomed. Dai. Standing on the rooftop, his expression twisted into a smirk, he held Ascalon in both hands. Without a shred of hesitation, he leaped down and drove the sacred blade into Issei's back. The sound of metal piercing flesh echoed through the office, followed by the sickening warmth of blood spilling from the wound. Serziches had given orders to retrieve him dead or alive, but Dai had already made his choice. Dead. He twisted the blade slightly, relishing the feeling of power over his fallen brother. Niven's eyes widened in sheer horror. Niven. Spock-hun. Rage flared in her crimson eyes as she conjured a swarm of bats, each coated in crackling purple lightning, ready to unleash hell. But before she could act, another crimson magic circle emerged on the office wall. From it, a sharp bolt of golden lightning lashed out, striking Niven before she could release her attack. The shock sent her body into convulsions, momentarily stunning her. A small figure stepped through the portal Kaneko, in her Senjutsu mode. Her aura flared as she lunged forward, grabbing hold of Niven and locking her in place with her enhanced strength. Niven's body suddenly froze, encased in a suffocating purple energy. It was Gasper. His forbidden Baylor view. No, now it was Eon Baylor, a true Longinus. His glowing red eyes locked onto Niven, ensuring she remained paralyzed in time. Ross was soon stepped forward, clad in her full Valkyrie uniform. A magic circle formed beneath her feet as she cast a powerful sealing spell, golden runes wrapping around Niven's form, binding her completely. And then, Riaz entered. Clad in her elegant attire, her presence exuded dominance. Akeno stood beside her, wearing her priestess of kimono, lightning crackling in her palm. Asia followed behind them, her hands clenched in worry, yet her faith in her comrades unwavering. Riaz. Kaneko, that's enough. Niven is already restrained. Now, I need you to find the rebellion before the blood wraiths arrive. Kaneko gave a firm nod before stepping away from the immobilized Niven. Without wasting another second, she began scouring the office, searching every possible hiding spot for the demonic blade. But no matter where she looked, the rebellion was nowhere to be found. Back with the 4 swordsmen. Kiba barely had time to register what happened before he was sent flying across the room. A simple flick, just a flick, had sent him crashing into the far wall, his body embedding into the plaster as cracks spread outward from the impact. The room fell into a stunned silence. Standing there, casually spinning the empty Diet Coke can between his fingers, was Issei. Not only was he alive, he looked completely unharmed. His tendons, which had been slashed to prevent movement, were fully healed. The deep stab wounds from Durandal and Kiba's sword birth were gone without a trace. Even his pants, which should have been torn and bloodied, were in pristine condition, as if the battle had never occurred. Zenobia, Irina, and Kiba, all skilled swordsmen, all of whom had inflicted fatal wounds upon him, stared in horror as Issei simply walked forward, spinning the can with an almost bored expression. The once embedded Durandal had already slipped from his body, clattering onto the ground behind him. The only remnants of the attack were the glowing light blades still lodged in his left forearm, and the 2 blades from sword birth, impaled in his chest, none of which seemed to hinder his movement in the slightest. Dai, standing a few feet away, tightened his grip on Ascalon. His eyes narrowed, his smirk faltering as he realized that this wasn't the outcome he had expected. He had planned to kill Issei. Not wound him. Not weaken him. Kill him. Yet here he was, walking around like nothing had happened. No. That wasn't right. He wasn't just walking. He was toying with them. Dai's frustration snapped. With a sharp inhale, he lunged forward, Ascalon raised high, ready to strike him down properly this time. But before the blade could even descend. THWACK. A single backfoot kick slammed into Dai's midsection with bone-crushing force. The impact sent him rocketing across the room, crashing through a wooden desk before slamming into the far side of the office. The moment his body hit the ground, Ascalon slipped from his grasp, clattering lifelessly beside him. His gun, Luce, who had been lying lazily on the floor near a fresh box of pizza, barely flinched as Dai's unconscious body skidded past him. His only reaction was a slow blink. Issei let out a sigh, flicking the Diet Coke can into the air before letting it clatter onto the floor. Without breaking stride, he crouched down, grabbed a slice of pizza from the open box near Luce, and took a casual bite. Zenobia snapped out of her shock first, gripping Durandal tightly as she lunged forward. Issei, mid-bite, barely even glanced at her. With a flick of his wrist, he pulled one of Kiba's sword birth blades from his own chest and hurled it across the room. The wounds on his chest healed at immense speed, almost akin to the speed of light. The makeshift sword cut through the air, slicing into the ceiling fan's wires. SCHK. With a loud creak, the fan detached from the ceiling. Crash. It came crashing down directly onto Zenobia and Irina, pinning them to the floor in a tangle of metal and broken wood. Issei exhaled through his nose, shaking his head as he chewed on the pizza. They really thought that was enough to kill him. As Issei finally reached his destination, a dusty old jukebox standing in the corner of the room, he came to a stop. The dim glow of the neon lights reflecting off its glass surface gave it an almost nostalgic feel, like something out of an old action movie. With a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips, he lifted his right arm into the air, pointing his index finger skyward with an unmistakable confidence. Issei. This party's getting crazy. Let's rock. Without hesitation, he brought his hand down and pressed the jukebox's start button with a firm tap. Silence. His smirk twitched slightly, but he wasn't about to let something as trivial as this ruin the moment. With the same flair, he pressed it again. Still, no music played. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of his forehead as he pressed it a third time, this time with a bit more force. Nothing. Frustration flickered across Issei's face as he clenched his jaw. He had built up the perfect momentum, only for the damn machine to ruin it. Without a second thought, he balled his fist and slammed it down onto the jukebox. The sheer force of the impact sent a deep crack splintering across the top, partially crushing the machine's frame. A few loose parts rattled inside as the jukebox let out a distorted hum, its neon lights flickering wildly like a dying heartbeat. Music play. The jukebox suddenly crackled, its speakers blaring as an energetic rock song filled the room. A wide grin stretched across Issei's face as he nodded along to the beat, his left foot stomping in rhythm against the floor. His white hair swayed slightly as he started bobbing his head, completely immersed in the music. Meanwhile, Irina and Zinovia groaned, pushing themselves up from the collapsed ceiling fan that had momentarily trapped them. Dust and debris clung to their clothes, but their focus remained locked on Issei. Their eyes burned with determination. With a battle cry, Irina rushed forward first, summoning another holy light blade in her grip. She lunged at him, swinging it in a sharp, precise arc aimed at his chest. However, Issei barely spared her a glance. He smoothly twisted his body, his back now facing her, and with a flick of his arm, he raised the remaining embedded light sword still lodged in his left forearm. The blade clashed against hers, sparks flying as their weapons collided. Before Irina could push forward, Zinovia charged in, gripping Durandal tightly as she prepared to bring the massive sword down on him in a devastating strike. But Issei was faster. His right hand shot out in an instant, his fist slamming directly into Zenovia's face with enough force to send a shockwave through the air. The impact made her stumble, and before either of them could react, he followed up with a swift brutal kick, his right foot smashing into both their faces simultaneously. The force of the blow sent both girls flying backward, their bodies crashing into the debris-strewn floor. Issei smirked, rolling his neck as he took a step forward, the music from the jukebox still pounding through the room. Issei. Come on, ladies, that all you got? Zenovia's rage boiled over as she clenched her sword tighter, her grip trembling with fury. Zinovia. Why you? Blinded by her frustration, she charged forward, swinging Durandal in a wide arc, aiming to cleave Issei in two. However, just as her blade was about to make contact, Issei suddenly opened his right hand. From across the room, a random electric guitar levitated into the air, humming with an eerie purple glow before it flew toward him at high speed. The moment it landed in his grasp, he swung it effortlessly, parrying Zenovia's attack. A crackling surge of purple lightning erupted from the point of impact, momentarily blinding Zinovia as sparks and energy scattered through the room. The sheer force of the clash sent a powerful shockwave outward, rattling the furniture. And then, the illusion shattered. The guitar flickered, its form distorting before revealing the rebellion itself, now crackling with Niven's purple lightning, which had disguised its true identity all along. Zenovia's eyes widened in pure horror as the realization struck her like a hammer. Zinovia. No way. Her mind raced. Durandal was a sword that could cut through anything. And yet, not only had the rebellion blocked it with ease, it remained completely unscathed. Issei smirked, casually resting the massive sword on his shoulder. Issei. Seems like my theory was right. He spun rebellion once in his grip, its blade humming with untapped power. Issei. If the holy sword Durandal now Durandal attempts to cut through rebellion, it'll stay in pristine condition. Since this sword was forged to withstand any magic attack, your so-called holy power doesn't mean a damn thing to it. Zinovia gritted her teeth, her mind scrambling for an answer. Zinovia. How? Before she could react, Issei shoved her back with one hand, sending her stumbling several feet. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, he extended his left hand outward. A faint ripple in the air formed as he activated a form of telekinesis magic, causing the fallen gun, loose, to suddenly lift from the floor. The weapon spun in midair before snapping into his waiting palm. Without hesitation, Issei aimed it at Zinovia and pulled the trigger 3 times. The first shot struck her womb, the force making her gasp in shock. The second shot hit her right wrist, making her lose her grip on Durandal. The third shot slammed into her shoulder, sending her reeling backward in pain. Zinovia crashed onto the ground, struggling to move as the burning pain from the gunshot spread through her body. Meanwhile, the scene shifted back to Niven, still restrained by the seals placed upon her. But suddenly, a crackling surge of purple lightning struck the bindings, shattering them instantly. The purple glow of Eon Baylor, which had immobilized her completely, also disintegrated into nothing. The unexpected turn of events sent a wave of horror through Riaz, Asia, Roswis, and especially Gasper. Niven slowly rose to her feet, rolling her shoulders as if she had just woken up from a nap. Her lips curled into a sadistic smirk, her violet eyes gleaming with amusement. Niven. Did you truly believe those pathetic little seals would hold me? She took a slow step forward, her presence radiating a dangerous aura. Niven. A seal meant for an ultimate class being. How cute. I am far beyond that, dear. With a wicked laugh, she raised her arms, summoning dozens of bats made entirely of purple lightning. The swarm burst forward in a chaotic frenzy, rushing toward Riaz, Asia, and Roswis with terrifying speed. The Keno, reacting instantly, extended her hands and unleashed her own lightning, aiming to counter Niven's attack. However, something went horribly wrong. The moment Keno's lightning clashed with Niven's, it suddenly turned purple, as if corrupted by Niven's own power. Keno's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Instead of repelling the attack, her own lightning suddenly turned against her. Keno. Impossible. Before she could react, a bolt of her own corrupted lightning shot toward her, slamming into her chest and sending her flying backward. Riaz, Asia and Roswis could do nothing but watch in horror as the thunder succubus began her counterattack. Riaz instinctively stepped forward, conjuring a sphere of destructive power, her crimson aura flaring violently. Riaz. Akeno. Are you alright? Akeno struggled to push herself up, her body still crackling with the residual effects of Niven's corrupted lightning. Akeno. I'm fine. But my magic. She's interfering with it somehow. Niven let out a sultry chuckle, casually flicking a strand of her deep violet hair behind her ear. Niven. Oh, come now, Akeno. A daughter of the infamous fallen angel, Vergil, should know better than to play with lightning in front of its queen. Suddenly, her bat swarmed forward, moving faster than before. Roswis barely had time to reinforce her barrier before they slammed into it, sending powerful electric pulses rippling across the shield. The force of the attack sent Roswis staggering back, her forehead breaking into a sweat. Asia clung to Riaz, trembling. She had already summoned her healing power, but in the chaos, she didn't know who to focus on first. Meanwhile, Kaneko, still in her senjutsu mode, gritted her teeth as she searched every corner of the room for the rebellion. But now, she knew why she couldn't find it. Kaneko's gaze shifted toward the battle between Issei and Zenobia, her eyes widening as she realized that rebellion had never been hidden at all. It had been in plain sight, disguised as a simple electric guitar. Kaneko. TCH. So that's why I couldn't sense it. She turned her focus back to Niven, her fists clenching as her white cat-like aura flared. Kaneko. We can't afford to waste time. I need to take her down before she helps him any further. She launched herself forward, aiming a senjutsu-infused punch at Niven's exposed side. But just as her fist was about to land, Niven smirked and simply raised a single finger. A loud crack echoed through the room as a pulse of purple electricity shot out, hitting Kaneko in midair. Kaneko gasped, her entire body locking up as the purple lightning overwhelmed her nervous system. She crashed onto the floor, convulsing, her muscles spasming uncontrollably. Niven tilted her head, watching Kaneko struggle to move. Niven. Poor little kitten. I'd play with you more, but I think my knight would get jealous. She snapped her fingers, and another surge of lightning erupted from the floor, sending Kaneko flying backward, landing near Akeno laying unconscious. Roswis barely had time to react before a powerful bolt of purple lightning crashed into her, sending a violent current surging through her body. Her muscles seized up instantly, her voice escaping in a strangled gasp as her nerves were overwhelmed by Niven's electricity. Her body collapsed limply onto the floor, smoke rising from her uniform as she twitched involuntarily. Gasper, who had been watching in horror, took a step back, his entire body trembling. The way Niven commanded her lightning, the way she used her swarm of vampire bats so effortlessly, it terrified him to his very core. Panicking, he tried to activate his sacred gear, Forbidden Baler View, hoping to freeze her in place. But before he could even focus, a massive wave of bats surged toward him, their tiny bodies crackling with Niven's signature violet electricity. The swarm struck him with brutal precision. The moment the bats made contact, Gasper let out a sharp pained scream as the electricity tore through him, his limbs flailing helplessly. The sheer force of the attack sent him stumbling backward, collapsing onto his knees, his body convulsing violently from the shock. Before he could even recover, the swarm swirled around him, shifting and twisting until, in a fluid, almost hypnotic motion, the bats merged together, reforming into Niven's alluring human form. She stood before him, her crimson eyes gleaming with mischief as she tilted her head, examining him with amusement. Niven. My, what do we have here? She reached out, delicately lifting Gasper's chin with her lightning-coated fingertips. Niven. A cute innocent little boy cross-dressing as a girl. How pitiful for such innocence. Gasper's breath hitched. His body was paralyzed with fear as Niven leaned in closer, her smooth lips mere inches from his own. And then. She pressed her lips against his, capturing them in a deep intimate kiss. Gasper's eyes widened in sheer terror, his muffled whimpers of protest barely audible. A strange, electrifying sensation flooded his body, stealing the warmth from his very being. His strength withered away as he felt something being drained from him, his energy, his magic, even his will to fight. His body trembled violently as Niven sucked the very life force out of him. Tears began to well up in his eyes, his vision blurring as exhaustion overtook him. For Gasper, this was nothing short of a nightmare. Riaz, who had been watching in horror, finally snapped. Riaz. Gasper. Her rage exploded, a massive sphere of crimson destruction magic forming in her palm. She wasted no time, hurling the attack straight at Niven. But Niven didn't even flinch. She merely extended her free hand, allowing her purple lightning to lash out violently, colliding with Ria's attack. In an instant, Ria's power of destruction was completely neutralized. Instead of weakening Niven, it only seemed to strengthen her. Niven's violet aura flared brighter, her presence growing even more menacing. Before Riaz could react, a powerful bolt of lightning shot from Niven's fingertips, striking Riaz's left arm. Riaz let out a piercing scream. The pain was unlike anything she had ever felt before. Her arm burned, her nerves seared by the raw voltage coursing through her flesh. She crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Asia gasped. Asia. Riaz. Without thinking, she rushed forward, desperate to heal her. But Niven simply flicked her wrist, and another streak of purple lightning struck Asia square in the chest. The poor girl barely had time to react before she collapsed beside Riaz, her consciousness fading instantly. Finally satisfied, Niven pulled away from Gasper, releasing him from her grasp. The young damper slumped onto the ground, his body shaking violently. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he curled into himself, completely traumatized. Niven clicked her tongue in disappointment. Niven. How boring. A pitiful crossdresser, and yet he had so little to offer me. With a look of utter disinterest, she casually shoved Gasper onto the floor, leaving him sobbing in complete shock. But before she could savor the moment, a bolt of golden lightning suddenly struck her foot. The impact sent a tingling sensation up her leg, making her flinch. Niven's gaze flickered toward the source. Standing defiantly in the wrecked office, her body still aching, was Akeno. Her breathing was heavy, her arms trembling, but her eyes burned with unrelenting fury. Akeno. I'll make you pay for what you did to him. Niven merely raised a brow before letting out a soft chuckle. Niven. Oh, my. Is the little priestess angry? She feigned a gasp, placing a hand on her chest as if she were offended. Niven. Have I struck a nerve? Akeno's body crackled with golden electricity, her fury manifesting into raw power. Akeno. You think you can just waltz in here and hurt my friends? Niven licked her lips, thoroughly amused. Niven. Oh, sweetheart. I don't just think I can. I know I can. Akeno let out a furious scream as she unleashed a massive bolt of lightning straight at Niven. But the thunder succubus merely smirked. Her body morphed into a swarm of bats, evading the attack effortlessly. As Akeno's lightning struck the ground harmlessly, Niven's bats whirled around her in a chaotic storm. Akeno. TCH. Niven's voice echoed from the swarm, mocking and taunting. Niven. What makes my knight even a fraud when saved your sorry assess? Akeno's rage surged. Akeno. He's nothing but a disgrace. An arrogant, selfish bastard who doesn't deserve to be called a knight. A cruel, sadistic laugh echoed from the swarm. Niven. How bold. But now, I think it's time I show you the wrath of a night succubus. And then. The bat struck. One after another, they electrified Akeno, shocking her relentlessly. Akeno screamed in agony, her body convulsing violently as the intense voltage overwhelmed her. Desperate, she unleashed a powerful pulse of lightning, but it was useless. Niven's magic was far beyond hers. As the final shock sent her crashing onto her knees, the bats whirled together, reforming into Niven's human form once more. With a smirk, she crooked a single finger, beckoning Akeno forward. Then, she ran her tongue across her lips, grinning mischievously. Akeno. You think you're being cute? Akeno gritted her teeth, seething in frustration. Niven. Bitch, I'm adorable. Her sultry laugh echoed through the ruined office, a haunting melody of amusement and cruelty. Akeno, her body trembling with pain and fury, refused to let it end like this. Gritting her teeth, she clenched her fists, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. Golden lightning crackled around her, flaring wildly, illuminating the entire battlefield. The sheer intensity of the energy she gathered made the air tremble. This was her strongest attack. Akeno. I won't lose to you. With a ferocious cry, she unleashed the full power of her divine lightning, aiming directly at Niven. But something was wrong. The brilliant golden glow began to flicker, shifting, darkening until it was no longer gold. It was purple. Akeno's eyes widened in horror. Niven had hijacked her magic. Before she could react, her own lightning turned against her, surging violently through her body. Akeno. Aog. The pain was excruciating, her nerves burned, her muscles locked up, and her throat tore from her screams. The overwhelming voltage sent her body crashing to the floor, twitching and convulsing from the raw electrical surge. Her vision blurred, her senses fading. With one final gasp, Akeno succumbed to the pain, her consciousness slipping away. She lay motionless, completely defeated. Niven smirked, admiring her handiwork. Niven. How tragic. The so-called priestess of thunder, undone by her own lightning. With a satisfied chuckle, she flipped her hair, before turning her attention elsewhere. Meanwhile, back with Issei. Zenobia was completely unconscious, her body still racked with pain from the gunshot wounds. That left only Irina. The former childhood friend of Issei stood her ground, gripping her light sword tightly. She was determined to defeat him. But Issei remained calm. His movements were sharp, precise. Irina's attacks came fast and relentless, but Issei effortlessly deflected each strike with smooth parries and calculated dodges. His defensive stance was near impenetrable, each of her swings met nothing but air or steel. Irina gritted her teeth in frustration. Irina. Issei Hyoudou. In the name of God, I shall exorcise you. Amen. With her proclamation, her angel wings burst forth from her back, her halo glowing brilliantly above her head. A divine aura surrounded her, amplifying her strength and speed. Her next strike came at twice the speed. But just as her sword was about to land, a deep commanding voice echoed through the air. Royal Guard. And in an instant, everything changed. Irina quickly formed a magic circle with her hands, her fingers trembling slightly as she gathered pure holy energy. A radiant beam of light erupted from the circle, shooting straight toward Issei with divine force. But Issei was ready. Timing it perfectly, he jumped, activating Royal Guard at the exact moment of impact. The energy collided with him, but instead of harming him, it was completely absorbed, siphoned into his body, and converted into dark demonic energy. As the beam faded, Issei descended gracefully, landing without a single scratch. His expression remained locked onto her, unwavering, unshaken. Now, it was his turn. The sheer pressure of his presence intensified, his demonic aura swelling and radiating outward like an ominous tide. He took a single step forward. Irina flinched. The cold, creeping fear crawled up her spine, an instinctive reaction to the monstrous energy he was now exuding. She flapped her angelic wings, lifting herself into the air, putting distance between them. Desperately, she fired a barrage of holy light projectiles, hoping to keep him at bay. But Issei didn't even slow down. Each attack was met with effortless precision, his Royal Guard activating in rapid succession, negating and absorbing every single blast. His body never faltered. His slow, menacing approach continued. The office lights flickered, reacting to the immense energy crackling in the air. Then, a sudden glow emanated from both of his gauntlets. The jade gem embedded in the devil arm drake pulsed brilliantly. Boost. The energy he had absorbed from Irina doubled. Her attacks had only made him stronger. Irina's breathing quickened as panic set in. Her grip tightened on her sword as she made a split-second decision. She summoned another light blade, her determination outweighing her fear. And then, with all the strength she could muster, she rushed him. Her wings flared, and her blade sliced through the air, aiming straight for his chest. But then, Dreadnought. A blinding orange light engulfed Issei, illuminating the entire office. When the light faded, Issei stood there, transformed. His body was now clad in dark crimson demonic armor, adorned with intricate purple and red highlights. The Dreadnought form. Unlike Royal Guard, which required precise timing to absorb attacks, Dreadnought was automatic. Any physical or magical attack that touched him would be absorbed instantly. Irina froze. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. She had no time to process her fear, she had already committed to her attack. Her sword clashed against his armor. And bounced off. Her eyes widened in horror as she felt the entire force of her own attack vanish. It hadn't even scratched him. It had been completely absorbed. And then. Boost. The energy multiplied again. Her attack had only made him even stronger. Before she could react, Issei raised his hand, his entire body now overflowing with enhanced power. He took another step forward. Irina. Stay back. Irina's voice wavered, her eyes wide with terror. She staggered backward in the air, clutching her sword tightly, as if it could somehow protect her. Issei did not stop. His presence was overpowering, his menacing gaze locked onto her as he closed a distance. She desperately fired another blast of holy energy, but it was too late. With a flicker of movement, a massive shockwave of raw demonic force erupted from Issei's body. The impact was immediate. Irina was blasted backward, her body slammed into the far wall, sending debris and shattered furniture flying. She let out a pained cry, her armor cracking, her wings twitching from the sheer force of the attack. As she lay stunned and injured, her breathing shaky, she could do nothing but watch. As Issei slowly stepped forward, unchallenged as he deactivates Dreadnought. Back with Ingvild, she was just minding her own business, enjoying the aftermath of her rampage, until a sudden shift in the air. A presence behind her. Kiba, who had finally regained consciousness, rose to his feet. His eyes burned with determination as he activated his sacred gear, Sword Birth. The ground around him rumbled, and from it, countless demonic swords emerged, their dark auras crackling with energy. Without hesitation, he gripped one tightly and rushed at Ingvild, letting out a fierce battle cry. His blade whistled through the air, aimed straight for her. But before it could make contact, Ingvild smirked. With a sudden burst of movement, she morphed into a swarm of bats, her form dispersing into countless tiny creatures that fluttered and zipped around Kiba in an eerie chaotic display. Kiba skidded to a stop, his blade slashing at nothing but air. Before he could react, the bats whirled behind him, reforming into Ingvild's seductive curvaceous figure. And then, she lunged at him. Ingvild. Come here, pretty boy. Her sultry voice sent a chill down Kiba's spine, but before he could defend himself, her hands cupped his face, pulling him in. Then, she kissed him. Deeply. Intimately. Kiba's eyes widened in horror. A cold, paralyzing sensation washed over him as he felt his strength draining away. His demonic energy was being sucked out, devoured by Niven's insatiable hunger. His body grew weaker and weaker, his knees buckling beneath him. The moment she pulled away, Kiba collapsed, his breathing ragged, his limbs trembling from sheer exhaustion. Niven licked her lips, her crimson eyes glinting with amusement. Niven. Quite the energy, pretty boy. But still bores me. She let out a mock sigh, stepping over his limp body, as if he were nothing more than an afterthought. Meanwhile, back with Issei. He was just chilling, taking a moment to breathe in the midst of the chaos when… clang. The sword suddenly came swinging down at him. But Issei, with unnatural reflexes, caught it mid-air using rebellion. The steel shook from the impact, but he held firm. He glanced up. It was Dai. The man's face was twisted with fury as he held Ascalon in his grip, trying to push the blade deeper against rebellion. Dai. I'll put you back where you belong, Issei. And after that. His eyes gleamed with greed and vengeance. Dai. I'll reclaim rebellion as mine. Issei, however, remained completely silent. His gaze lowered slightly. He noticed Dai's stance. More importantly, his legs were wide open. A perfect target. Without hesitation, Issei activated Drake's Greaves and… boost. He delivered a brutal kick straight to Dai's groin. Crunch. Dai's eyes nearly popped out of his skull as he let out a blood-curdling scream, his grip on Ascalon immediately failing as he dropped the blade. But Issei wasn't done yet. Planting rebellion into the ground, he cocked his right arm back, his gauntlet glowing ominously as he charged up another attack. Boost. The energy surged through him, doubling the strength of his next move. Then. Issei. Rising dragon. He leaped high into the air, his fist rocketing forward. Straight into Dai's already shattered groin. The sheer force of the attack launched Dai off the ground, sending him hurtling into the distance like a ragdoll. His body twisted unnaturally mid-air, his eyes rolling back as tears streamed down his face from the unbearable pain. Before he even hit the ground, he passed out. Drake would then announce. Savage. Issei landed gracefully, shaking his head. Issei. When will this idiot learn? But before he could reflect any further. Spock-hun. A familiar, sultry voice called out. Before he could react, Niven launched herself at him. She wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Niven. Can I please ask your tormentors for what they did to you? Issei simply stared at her, deadpan. She was literally clinging onto him like a love-struck fangirl. Issei. No. Let them be. His tone was flat, final. Issei. Fate has other plans for them, anyway. Niven pouted dramatically, tightening her grip on him. Niven. HMPH. Fine. She reluctantly let go, crossing her arms like a grumpy child. Issei could only sigh, running a hand through his hair as he slicks it back to the hairstyle he wants. It seemed like no matter what happened, he always had a simp on his back. He just sighed with a deadpan expression. Issei. Story of my life. The entire scene suddenly transitioned into a glass with the last image of Issei and then… bang. 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 The glass became shattered, transitioning into the word. Mission 2. End. Mission rank. S. Inside Issei's wrecked office, the aftermath of battle was evident. The unconscious and injured bodies of the Grimoire peerage were sprawled across the floor. Despite the destruction surrounding him, Issei remained unbothered. He reached into the open pizza box lying on the floor, grabbing another slice. Taking a bite, he chewed casually, his gaze shifting to Niven, who was just as relaxed. Between bites, he spoke up. Issei. Tell me, Nevada. Should we call the blood wraiths for a body cleanup? He gestured lazily at the bodies of his fallen enemies. Issei. I mean, their unconscious body and weapons could fetch us some extra cash. Devil biology and all. Niven, who was still happily munching on her own slice, let out a soft, satisfied moan. Niven. I can feel the cheese's flavor flowing through my tongue. She licked her lips, eyes gleaming in pleasure. Then, with a sultry smirk, she turned to Issei, lowering her voice to an intimate whisper. Niven. Almost like tasting my night seed. A moment of silence followed. Issei stared at her, completely deadpan. This woman was a damn simp. A freaky one, to be precise. He let out a tired sigh, rubbing his temples as he leaned back against rebellion, which was still stabbed into the ground. Issei. Hello? Anyone listening? His voice echoed in the now eerily quiet office. Niven, who was still lost in her pizza-fueled euphoria, suddenly turned her head toward him. A small pout forming on her lips. She grumpily turned her back to him, crossing her arms in fake annoyance. Niven. HMPH. If it's cash, go ahead. These tormentors of yours deserve to have their bodies dissected for what they did to you." Just as she finished speaking, a sudden glow engulfed the office floor. A large magic circle flared to life. The familiar crimson sigil of Ria's grimoire. From her position on the floor, Ria's barely conscious. Managed to activate a teleportation spell. One by one, her fallen comrades vanished in a flash of red light. Their bodies. Their weapons. Everything gone. Niven and Issei, who were unaffected by the spell, simply stared at the now empty battlefield. There was a long, awkward silence. Then, Niven's rage exploded. "Niven. Those miserable little." Her purple lightning crackled violently, shaking the entire room as she fumed with frustration. Meanwhile, Issei just sighed. He never really cared about finishing them off, but still. That was potential cash. Gone. Issei. Well, there goes my payday. With a bored shrug, he grabbed another slice of pizza and took a bite. After chewing for a moment, he spoke up again. "Issei. On second thought, if they already escaped, how about I just take some paid missions instead?" He glanced at Niven, who was still seething with anger. "Niven. TCH. Fine. But I'm still pissed." She stuffed another slice of pizza into her mouth aggressively, clearly using food as a coping mechanism. Issei just shook his head as he took another bite of his own. Honestly. At least pizza never disappointed him, along with Diet Coke. As Issei finished his slice, he stretched his arms before grabbing the last piece from the box. Niven, who was still sulking, noticed this and immediately puffed out her cheeks in annoyance. "Niven. Hey. That was mine." She reached for the pizza, but Issei tilted his head back, taking a large bite before she could snatch it. Niven let out a dramatic gasp, placing a hand over her chest, as if she had just witnessed a grave betrayal. "Niven. How could you betray me like this, Spock-hun?" Issei, chewing nonchalantly, raised a brow at her theatrix. "Issei. Relax. I'll buy you another one later." Niven huffed, crossing her arms. "Niven. It's not about the pizza. It's about the principle." Issei just rolled his eyes, finishing the last bite. Just as he was about to lean back and relax, a sudden noise echoed through the office. A sharp beeping sound. Issei's gaze flickered toward the desk where his mission communicator was flashing. He walked over and picked it up, checking the incoming request. As he read through the details, his golden eyes gleamed with interest. "Issei. Well. Looks like I won't be bored after all." Niven perked up, her earlier sulking immediately forgotten. "Niven. Ooh. What kind of mission are we talking about? Assassination? Demon hunting? Or maybe some poor fool who needs a little persuasion?" She licked her lips at the last part, her purple lightning crackling faintly in excitement. Issei scrolled further through the details, his smirk growing. "Issei. Something bigger. Looks like someone just put out a contract. On an entire faction." Niven's eyes widened, and then she grinned. "Niven. Oh, now that's sexy." Issei chuckled, tossing the communicator onto the desk. "Issei. Looks like I'll need to gear up for this one." As he grabbed Rebellion from the ground, the blade hummed with power, sensing the battle ahead. Niven clung onto his arm, pressing herself against him. "Niven. Let me come with you. Pretty please. I promise to be a good girl." Issei sighed, but he knew there was no way in hell she'd let him come with him. "Issei. No. You stay here. I'm not letting you groom some strays." Niven let out an exaggerated pout, crossing her arms in disappointment. "Niven. Fine. Take all the fun and stupidity with you, then." Issei sighed, rubbing his temples before grabbing his phone. With a few taps, he placed a massive food order. A moment later, he turned the screen toward Niven, showing the sheer amount of food he'd just purchased an entire mukbang feast. "Issei. Don't text me, don't email me, don't call me on WhatsApp. And stay here." Niven's golden eyes immediately lit up, sparkling with excitement. She practically drooled as she stared at the screen, her body trembling in anticipation. "Niven. Really? Okay. I'll be a good girl and stay here and eat. If you need anything from me, just call mommy for help, Spock-hun." Issei let out a deep sigh, his expression deadpan. "Issei. Yeah, that's not happening." Shaking his head, he turned away, stepping toward the closet. He pulled the door open, reaching inside to grab his signature purple design trench coat and white combat gloves. With practiced ease, he slipped on the coat, adjusting the collar slightly before pulling on the gloves, flexing his fingers to ensure a snug fit. As Issei slipped on his trench coat, the familiar weight of the fabric settled around his shoulders. He adjusted the collar slightly before pulling on his white combat gloves, flexing his fingers to ensure a perfect fit. Just then, the doorbell rang. Niven's golden eyes lit up, and in a flash of purple lightning, she was already at the door, swinging it open to reveal the food delivery. The poor delivery guy barely had time to react before she snatched the bags from his hands, giving him a wink before slamming the door shut. Niven. Finally. My feast has arrived. She floated over to the table, her movement smooth and elegant, before placing the bags down with a satisfied grin. One by one, she pulled out container after container, the sheer amount of food enough to feed a small army. Issei glanced at the spread, shaking his head. Issei. At least this'll keep you busy while I'm gone. Niven was already digging through the bags, her golden eyes sparkling as she took in the feast before her. Niven. MMH. Spock-hun, you really do spoil me. Issei rolled his eyes, shaking his head as he turned toward the exit. Just as he was about to leave, Niven suddenly perked up, her mouth still full. Niven. Oh. Before you go. She swallowed her food, then licked her lips before grinning at him. Niven. Don't die, okay? If you do, I'll have to hunt your soul down and drag you back myself. Issei paused for a moment, scoffing. Issei. Like hell I'd go down that easily. With that, he stepped out, the door closing behind him, leaving Niven happily feasting as he ventured out for his next mission. Outside, the night air was crisp, and the dim glow of streetlights bathed the empty streets. He walked over to the poor delivery man, who looked visibly relieved that he wasn't about to be mugged after witnessing the chaos inside. Without a word, Issei pulled out the necessary cash and handed it over, along with a generous tip. Delivery man. Thanks sir. Issei simply nodded, stuffing his hands into his pockets as he strolled toward his parked motorcycle, a Kawasaki Ninja ZX-6R, sleek and polished under the glow of the city lights. He swung a leg over the bike, settling onto the seat with practiced ease before pressing the ignition. The machine roared to life, its deep, aggressive growl breaking the silence of the night. He revved the engine a few times, letting the raw power of the machine vibrate beneath him. Then, pulling in the clutch, he shifted into first gear, his left foot tapping down as he slowly released the clutch while blipping the throttle aggressively. With a sharp burst of speed, the bike lurched forward, tearing down the road, the sound of the exhaust screaming through the empty streets. Issei. I do hope this mission has the kind of party I'm looking for. As he hit the highway, he opened up the throttle, weaving effortlessly through the lanes. The city lights blurred past him as his speedometer climbed. The wind whipped against his face, and a smirk crept onto his lips. Tonight was going to be interesting. Japan, Kuoh Academy, time. 7:27 p.m. Inside the academy, within the grand meeting room where the faction leaders had gathered, a massive magic circle flared to life on the floor. It bore the unmistakable signature of the Grimoire peerage, and anticipation filled the air. The leaders stood, expecting to see the prized rebellion sword in their possession, perhaps even Issei Hyoudu's lifeless body as proof of their victory. But as the glow subsided, their expressions quickly turned to shock and horror. Instead of returning triumphantly, the entire Grimoire peerage lay on the ground, battered, bruised, and bloodied. Some had minor injuries, while others were in critical condition. Zenobia had suffered the worst, blood seeping from the gunshot wound in her lower abdomen. Gaspar, meanwhile, was curled up on the floor, trembling violently as tears streamed down his face. His mind had been shattered by the sheer horror of what he had experienced: lightning, bats, sadistic deeds, and the sensation of his life force being drained away. It was an ordeal he might never recover from. Serzich's face paled, his stomach twisting into a knot at the sight of his sister's broken body. Serzich's. Ria's. His voice boomed through the chamber as he immediately stood up from his chair. The other leaders followed suit, their faces grim with concern. Serzich's wasted no time, rushing toward his unconscious sister. Her left arm was charred with burn marks from Niven's purple lightning, her breathing weak and labored. Rage and desperation filled his eyes as he turned toward the guards. Serzich's. We need healers now. Treat their wounds immediately. The guard sprang into action, summoning skilled medics to tend to the fallen peerage. White magic circles illuminated the room as healing spells were cast, but even as the light of restoration washed over them, the tension in the air remained. This wasn't just a failed mission. It was a complete disaster. As soon as the medical units arrived, they wasted no time in assessing the severity of the injuries. A series of glowing magic circles appeared beneath them, illuminating the dim room with an eerie golden glow as they prepared to transport the fallen. Ria's was the priority. Her body was in a critical state. The wounds inflicted by Niven's lightning were unlike ordinary burns. The dark purple electricity left behind residual energy that resisted conventional healing magic. Even the famed Phoenix tears, known for their miraculous healing properties, would struggle against the cursed properties embedded in her wounds. The medical team carefully placed her on a stretcher, their faces tense with concern. Medic. Her internal damage is severe. We need to stabilize her before attempting any full recovery. More medics attended to the others: Asia, Akeno, and Gaspar, who had all suffered intense magical burns from Niven's relentless attacks. Gaspar remained in fetal position, eyes wide and vacant, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. His mind was shattered from the trauma of being drained and overpowered. No amount of comforting words could pull him out of the deep psychological abyss he had been thrown into. And then there was Dai. The once proud faction's pillar was lying on the floor, motionless, his hand still weakly gripping at his lower region. His face was frozen in sheer agony, tears welling up in his eyes. The devastating combination of boosted rising dragon nut shot had utterly destroyed him. Even as the medics lifted him onto a stretcher, a pathetic whimper escaped his lips. Dai. Hit. Soul. The medics winced at the sight. They could heal wounds, regrow limbs, and even restore lost mana, but this was a level of suffering that no magic could truly alleviate. Serzich's hands clenched into fists as he watched his sister being taken away. His usual calm and compass demeanor was shattered. Serzich's. Please be okay, just hang in there, Riaz. With a final pulse of teleportation magic, the medical units vanished, taking the injured straight to Serafol Memorial Hospital in the underworld. The room fell into silence, leaving only the faction leaders standing amidst the aftermath. Azazel exhaled deeply, rubbing the back of his neck before turning toward Michael. Azazel. Well, this sure went to hell real fast. We never thought that damn kid would go this far, especially to his own younger brother. He's no better than the monsters he fights. Michael, usually compassed and full of divine patience, could not hide his disappointment. His ace, his trusted warrior, had fallen. And more than that, he could feel the sting of betrayal. Issei Hyoudou was no longer the boy they once knew, more precise, a worse version that they expected from the pervert they hate. He closed his eyes, sighing before finally responding. Michael. It seems so. We'll have to go forward with our contingency plan. His blue eyes then shifted toward Azazel, his expression firm. Michael. We have no choice. We will send EVA to Kobe. Azazel's smirk faded at the mention of her. Azazel. HMPH. Redgrave's ward, huh? That girl's something else. If anyone can stand toe-to-toe with him, it's her. Michael gave a solemn nod. Michael. I'll inform Father Redgrave. Let's hope she can retrieve the blade from that disgrace of a pillar before it's too late. Serafol, who had been silent up until now, let out an annoyed huff, crossing her arms. She was furious, but beneath the anger, there was something else. Unease. Despite all the teasing and rivalry, Dai was still her lover. And to see him in such a pathetic state, she couldn't forgive it. Serafol. Why that damn pervert? EVA is gonna make him pay for what he did to my Dai. But Ajuka remained quiet, lost in thought as he analyzed the situation. His mind worked at incredible speeds, running through countless calculations, probabilities, and simulations. Eventually, he spoke. Ajuka. With Riaz and her peerage, Michael's ace, and Odin's Valkyrie failing to reclaim the rebellion, our next move must be more calculated. We cannot afford another reckless assault. His emerald eyes glowed slightly as he considered the likelihood of EVA's success. Ajuka. The probability of Redgrave's ward reclaiming the rebellion is quite high. Her combat ability is beyond ordinary parameters. If my data is correct, she is close to or possibly on par with ultimate class devils. Maybe even super devils under the right conditions. That statement alone sent a chill through the room. For the first time in a long while, they felt uncertainty. Odin leaned back in his chair, stroking his long white beard as he exhaled through his nose. His one eye, sharp and piercing, remained locked onto Michael. Odin. Either way, our only chance is the Redgrave girl. But tell me, Michael, are you certain that she alone is enough to handle the disgraced pillar? Michael turned toward Odin, his golden eyes calm yet unwavering in conviction. Michael. Worry not, Lord Odin. EVA Redgrave is no ordinary warrior. But just in case, we will also send some of our finest exorcists to aid her in this mission. With their combined strength, the probability Ajuka calculated has risen even higher. Odin let out a thoughtful hum, clearly weighing the Archangel's words. Before he could respond, a deep powerful voice cut through the air. Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, turned his gaze toward his daughter, the ever-wise Athena. Zeus. Athena, we need to strategize our next move. Inform your sister Artemis to prepare for her next hunt once we finalize a plan. Additionally, speak with Hephaestus, we'll need him to forge stronger sealing spells using the amulet in his possession. The goddess of wisdom nodded, her piercing grey eyes filled with understanding. Athena. As you wish, father. I shall ensure the preparations are handled swiftly. With that, the room fell into a heavy silence. The weight of their failure, of Issei Hyoudu's overwhelming strength, loomed over them like a dark storm cloud. The scene shifted back to Serzich's, who stood in the shadows, watching as his sister was taken away to Serafol Memorial Hospital. His hands trembled at his sides, clenched into tight fists. His usual calm, his benevolent smile, all of it was gone. The sight of Riaz, barely clinging to life, her once radiant aura now flickering like a dying ember, burned into his mind. Serzich's, whispering. Issei Hyoudou. His demonic power pulsed, raw and barely contained. Surziches. One day, you will pay for what you've done. The air around him cracked, a sign of his immense rage. He had never hated anyone before. But today, that changed. Scene cut. Opening start. Scene fades in. A lone figure stands atop a jagged cliff in the underworld. The wind howls, carrying the scent of war. Issei Hyoudou stands at the edge, his coat billowing behind him. Below, an army of the supernatural stretches across the battlefield. Devils, fallen angels, and gods from distant mythologies. A force united by a common enemy. Him. A smirk plays on his lips. Without hesitation he dives. Cut to high-speed descent, gunfire and steel flash. Mid-air, he draws loose an ombre, spinning as he rains down bullets. He lands with a shockwave, instantly cutting down a dozen foes with rebellion, his blade tearing through armor and flesh alike. With a single fluid motion, he lunges forward. Stinger. A piercing thrust sends an entire legion flying. Suddenly 2 crimson spheres of power of destruction hurtle toward him. Issei flips, twisting mid-air. Before impact, his hand glows royal guard. He absorbs the energy, dispersing it with ease. The attackers reveal themselves. Surziches, Lucifer and Ria's Gremory stand alongside Team DXD, their eyes filled with fury. Close-up shot. Issei smirks. Without hesitation, he raises loose and ombre, the muzzles aimed at his former allies. Gunshot. Scene shifts, blade clash. The bullets transition into sparks, flying. A brutal sword duel. Issei versus Dai. Dai strains under the weight of Issei's blows, his sword trembling. Issei, however, is calm, mocking. He isn't fighting seriously. He's toying with him. Their swords collide. Cut to black. New scene, mystery and intrigue. The beautiful blonde woman gazes at a massive containment tube glowing with holy magic. Inside, the shattered remains of Yamato. Scene shift. A single gunshot. A blonde man, face hidden in shadow, reloads his revolver, stepping over the corpses of stray devils. Scene shift. Apocalyptic confrontation. On the battlefield, Pexinox looms, surrounded by his monstrous army. Facing them alone, Issei. He grins. Force edge in hand. Without warning, he charges. Final scene, the forbidden fruit. A silhouette. Issei stands before a mysterious fruit. He reaches out. He takes a bite. Dark crimson energy erupts, engulfing him. The screen distorts, a surge of unstoppable power. Title card appears. Sekiryuutei may cry. Opening end. Scene shift. United Kingdom, Redgrave City. The church's hidden sanctum. Time. 10:31 a.m. Beneath an old cathedral in Redgrave City, within the church's secret underground research facility, a group of mage exorcists work tirelessly. Their focus. The shattered katana resting inside a mystical containment field where arcane magic attempted to restore it, but to no avail. This was Yamato, the blade of the Darkslayer, one of Sparda's legendary relics. A weapon of immense power, now broken, yet still radiating an ominous presence. As the researchers murmured amongst themselves, the heavy doors of the research chamber swung open. Stepping inside was a woman in her early 20s, her presence commanding attention. She had piercing ice blue eyes and wore a red scarf around her neck, a contrast to her golden blonde hair that cascaded down her shoulders. She was clad in a sleek black trench coat, beneath which she wore a fitted black peplum top. A pair of form-fitting black pants and thigh-high boots completed her ensemble, exuding both elegance and lethality. Her name was Eva Redgrave, a highly skilled church exorcist and a woman with a personal vendetta against devils. Her sharp gaze fixated on the broken katana, watching the arcane containment flicker as it struggled to repair the fractured weapon. She took a step closer but suddenly halted as a familiar presence entered the chamber. A priest in his mid-30s, dressed in ceremonial robes, walked toward her. His face bore the wisdom of years, yet his sharp eyes remained as alert as ever. This was Father Carl Redgrave, the man who had raised Eva after she had been orphaned by devils. Eva's expression softened as she immediately rushed toward him. "Eva. Father Redgrave." She embraced him, and after a brief moment, he returned the hug, his grip warm yet firm. As they pulled away, Eva's bright smile lingered, a rare moment of warmth in the otherwise cold reality of her life. "Carl." "Eva. It has been quite some time, young one." "Eva. Far too long, Father Redgrave." A smirk tugged at Carl's lips. He had missed her. It had been 5 years since they had last seen each other. However, the moment of reunion was fleeting. Eva, sensing something was amiss, tilted her head slightly. "Eva. You didn't just summon me here for a warm welcome, did you, Father?" The lightness in her voice faded as she noticed Carl's smile vanish. His expression turned grave, confirming her suspicion. "Carl." "Eva. This is a matter of great importance. I have summoned you here under the direct order of the Archangel, Lord Michael." Eva's eyes widened in disbelief as she processed her foster father's words. "Eva. From the Archangel Michael. The Chief of Heaven." Her voice carried a mix of shock and confusion. The idea that the leader of Heaven's forces had personally summoned her was overwhelming. Before she could say anything more, Carl placed a reassuring hand on her head, a familiar gesture from her childhood. Carl. I know it's a lot to take in, Eva, but Lord Michael has called you here for something of great importance. Carl then turned away from her, his gaze shifting toward the shattered katana resting within its containment field. Yamato. The legendary blade, one of Sparda's most powerful relics, was said to be able to cut through anything, even the very fabric of reality itself. In many ways, it was comparable to the holy sword Durandal, as both weapons shared the ability to slice through nearly anything. However, whereas Durandal was forged from holy magic, Yamato was its complete opposite, a weapon born of demonic power. The old priest's voice grew softer, yet more deliberate. Carl. Eva. Do you still remember the bedtime story I used to tell you when you were little? Eva tilted her head slightly. Eva. You mean the legendary Dark Knight? Sparda. The tale of the demon knight who betrayed his own kind to become humanity's savior. A small, nostalgic smile played at the corners of Carl's lips. Carl. Yes, that one. But, Eva. What if I told you that Sparda wasn't just a legend? That he wasn't some myth or fairy tale? Eva's breath hitched as her eyes widened in shock. For a moment, the idea seemed absurd. But her instincts forced her to take the claim seriously. She quickly steeled her expression, pushing away the initial surprise as she considered his words carefully. Eva. Father Redgrave. With all due respect, if Sparda truly existed, wouldn't the church and the other factions have records on him? There would be undeniable evidence of who he was. This isn't the time for riddles or stories. If you're serious, then I need proof. Carl sighed, closing his eyes for a brief moment. He had expected her skepticism, it was only natural. After all, history had long buried the truth about Sparda. But times had changed. After the recent coup d'etat at the Underworld's gateway, the Church, Heaven, and the other factions had begun to suspect that the Prince of Darkness or his followers were finally making their move. Carl slowly exhaled before speaking again. Carl, no Eva. I am not joking. Sparda was real. He actually existed. And only a select few within the Church's highest ranks, as well as a handful of individuals in the other factions, know the truth. A heavy silence filled the chamber as Carl's words sank in. Eva's mind raced. If Sparda had truly existed, then what else had been hidden from history? And more importantly, why was this revelation being brought up now? She clenched her fists. Something big was coming. And she had the feeling that she was about to be thrown right into the center of it. Carl's expression remained solemn as he continued. Carl, do you still remember how Sparda perished in the fairy tale Eva? The part where it says he died from the wounds he sustained in his battle against the Prince of Darkness. Eva's brows furrowed as she recalled the story from her childhood. Eva. Why yeah. Don't tell me. She hesitated, feeling an unease creeping into her chest. The Prince of Darkness also existed. Carl sighed heavily, already anticipating her reaction. He knew how difficult this revelation would be for her to process. Carl, yes Eva. The Prince of Darkness Mundus was real. But the version of the tale you know was fabricated. It was written to erase Sparda's existence from history, turning him into nothing more than a myth. And along with him, Mundus's true existence was also buried in secrecy. Eva clenched her fists, feeling her heart pounding against her chest. Carl. But more importantly, the story you read was false. Sparda did not die from his wounds inflicted by the Prince of Darkness. The truth is far more complex. Sparda perished alongside the 4 great Satans and the biblical god during the Great War. Eva's breath hitched as her mind tried to piece everything together. Eva. Wait. Father Redgrave, I still don't fully understand. If Sparda died in the Great War, does that mean Mundus is still alive? Carl's gaze darkened. Carl. Not alive but not dead either. The truth is that Mundus was not slain in battle. He was sealed away by none other than Sparda himself. A shiver ran down Eva's spine as she listened intently. Carl. That is how he earned the title humanity's savior and the treacherous knight. He betrayed the underworld, fought against his own kind, and sealed the Prince of Darkness away at the cost of everything. Carl's voice was steady but filled with weight as he spoke. Carl. During the Dark Knight Sparda's final moments, he divided his power into 5 separate relics. 3 of them were swords. He closed his eyes momentarily, as if focusing on long-forgotten knowledge. After taking a deep breath, he continued. Carl. First, there is Force Edge, a sword that holds the dormant destructive power of Sparda himself. Then, Rebellion, a blade renowned for its resilience against magical attacks. The fallen angels and the church have theorized that its power allows it to withstand even the devastating force of Durandal. And third, Yamato, a katana that can cut through anything, including the very fabric of reality itself. Eva remained silent, absorbing the information. Carl. The 4th relic was different. It was split into 2 halves said to contain Sparda's immense magical capabilities. A shadow passed over Carl's face before he continued. Carl. And lastly, the the fifth relic. A relic that not a single faction has ever discovered. Some believe that Sparda's very corpse was the final relic. But that assumption is wrong. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Eva, still processing what she had just learned, turned her gaze toward the shattered katana suspended within its containment field. The realization hit her like a cold wind, making her eyes widen in disbelief. Eva. Wait. Father Redgrave, are you telling me that the blade inside that containment field is Yamato? One of Sparda's legendary swords. Carl remained quiet for a moment before finally answering. Carl. Indeed, Eva. That broken blade is Yamato. A mix of awe and confusion swirled inside her. Eva. But. How? How could a sword of such power be in this state? Carl sighed, his voice carrying a hint of regret. Carl. 18 years ago, a stray exorcist attempted to steal Yamato. Had he succeeded, it could have ignited another great war. Thankfully, he was stopped but at a great cost. In the battle, Yamato was shattered. Eva clenched her fists. A sword that could cut through anything, even reality itself broken. How was that even possible? Her mind raced, but her frustration grew as she struggled to understand the true purpose behind this revelation. Eva. I don't understand. Why would Lord Michael summon me just to tell me that a supposed fairy tale hero was real? Why? Her voice wavered as a new thought crept in. Eva. Why was Sparda not recognized as a hero by the church, despite being humanity's savior? Carl exhaled deeply, hesitating for a brief moment. But an order was an order. He had no choice but to answer. Carl. Because, Eva. While Lord Michael acknowledges Sparda's deeds, he does not see him as a hero. He considers him an anti-hero, a devil who betrayed his own kind. Eva's hands trembled slightly. Eva. But he. Before she could argue, Carl raised a hand and gently hushed her. The tension in the air thickened as Eva swallowed her words, waiting for him to explain further. Carl. Eva, I understand your feelings, but no matter what he did, Sparda was still a devil. And a devil. Is a devil. That fact will never change. Eva's expression darkened. Her jaw clenched as frustration bubbled beneath the surface. To her, Sparda deserved more than just dismissal. He had sacrificed everything for humanity. Yet the church refused to acknowledge him as a true hero. Eva. That's not fair. Carl noticed her reaction but remained firm. Carl. Despite being a devil, his power, his very existence still holds great significance. And because of that, there will always be those who seek to steal his relics for their own purposes. If that were to happen, the consequences could be catastrophic. He paused, letting his words sink in before shifting the conversation. Carl. As for why you were summoned. It's because you are, without question, one of the strongest mage and swordswoman exorcists we have. Eva blinked in surprise. Carl's voice was firm, his expression unwavering as he delivered the briefing. Carl. Lord Michael has assigned you a mission. 2 nights ago, the Grigori's base of operations in the underworld was infiltrated by a stray devil, Issei Hyoudou, the former pillar of the faction alliance. He stole one of Sparda's legendary blades, the Rebellion. It must be reclaimed immediately. His eyes locked onto Eva, his tone growing even more serious. Carl, listen carefully, Eva. Issei Hyoudou is not an opponent to be taken lightly. He isn't the same foolhardy boy he once was. He took down the vice-governor of Grigori, Vergil, and left him in a coma. If you underestimate him for even a second, you won't live to regret it. The weight of his words settled heavily on Eva's shoulders. Reclaim the rebellion. Her. She took a slow breath, her hands clenching into tight fists. This wasn't just some simple retrieval mission, this was a battle against a monster who had already brought ruin to some of the greatest warriors in their world. And yet, if Lord Michael believed in her, if he was entrusting her with this task, then she would not let him down. She straightened her posture, her violet eyes burning with newfound determination. Eva. Understood. Carl would let out a soft smile at his ward for her bravery and determination. He then placed a firm yet reassuring hand on Eva's shoulder, his gaze filled with both pride and concern. Carl, be careful out there, Eva. You'll be accompanied by elite exorcists on your mission to reclaim the rebellion from the former pillar. Facing him alone, especially now that he bears the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, would be reckless, even for one of the church's finest. His words carried the weight of experience, a reminder that no matter how strong she had become, Issei Hyoudou was not an opponent to be underestimated. Eva nodded, her determination unwavering. This was her moment to prove her strength, her loyalty, and her purpose. She would not falter. Eva. I will not let the defeated dictate my fate, Father Redgrave. Carl's expression softened as he let out a quiet chuckle, a rare moment of warmth breaking through his usually pompous demeanor. He had watched Eva grow from an orphan child with no memory of her past into a formidable warrior. She had fought tirelessly to carve her own path, and now she stood ready to face one of the most dangerous adversaries the church had encountered. No matter what happened, he had faith in her. Scene change. Japan, Kobe, time. 7:43 p.m. Issei was still on his road trip on his Ninja ZX6R. No helmets, no safety gear. Not advisable for any readers planning to ride a motorcycle. Please wear your helmets and gear. He exited the highway, veering onto a small street that led to an abandoned warehouse. With a smooth motion, he shifted the bike into neutral, turned off the engine, and swung his leg over to dismount. His boots clicked against the pavement as he approached the building, his sharp eyes scanning the area. Issei. An abandoned building with no people whatsoever. Yeah, that screams perfect hiding spot for strays. Reaching into his coat, he pulled out his twin pistols, loose and ombre, the weight of the customized firearms familiar in his grip. With a flick of his wrists, he spun the pistols before taking a cautious step inside, remaining on high alert. Then, clatter. A sudden noise echoed from the shadows. Issei's instincts kicked in instantly. He spun around, raising both guns and aiming toward the source of the disturbance. Issei. Oh god, not another horror sound bullshit coming out of nowhere only to get jumped. I've seen this crap way too many times. Drop the act and show yourself. Without hesitation, he squeezed the triggers, sending a rapid barrage of bullets toward the noise. The impact was immediate. A pained scream rang out as a stray devil tumbled from the darkness, crashing onto the ground. Stray devil. You filthy exorcist. Issei chuckled, unfazed by the insult. With a flourish, he spun loose an ombre in his hands, the silver gleam of the barrels catching the dim light. Issei. More like a paid hunter for some quick cash. Sorry, buddy, but you gotta go. That was all it took to enrage the stray. Snarling, the twisted, deformed devil lunged at him, its elongated claws slashing through the air. Stray devil. Die, you mongrel. The fight begins. Issei sidestepped effortlessly, his body moving with the precision of a seasoned fighter. As the stray swiped at him, he ducked low, sweeping his leg under its feet and sending it crashing onto its back. Without missing a beat, he aimed loose downward and fired 2 shots, one to the shoulder, another grazing its horn. The stray howled, thrashing on the ground. Issei. Come on, you're making this way too easy. I was hoping for something. You know, fun. The stray roared, pushing itself up, its body twisting unnaturally as it regenerated the minor wounds. It suddenly spewed a blast of acidic energy, forcing Issei to flip backward, landing smoothly on his feet. Issei. Oh. You actually got some tricks. Alright then, let's dance. He holstered loose an ombre in a single fluid motion and reached for his rebellion, pulling the greatsword from his back. The stray charged again, this time moving with increased speed, its movements erratic. But Issei was faster. With a swift sidestep, he spun on his heel and drove the hilt of rebellion into the stray's gut, launching it backward. Before it could recover, he was already on it, flipping his sword into a reverse grip and bringing it down in a heavy strike. The ground beneath them cracked from the sheer force. The stray barely managed to roll away, panting heavily. Issei. Man, you strays are really predictable. Here, lem show you something cool. He flicked his wrist, pulling loose an ombre back out. As the stray scrambled to its feet, Issei fired a precise volley of bullets, each shot forcing it to step back further. The rhythm of his shots was almost playful, like a cat toying with its prey. Then, in an instant, he vanished from sight. The stray's eyes darted around in confusion. Stray devil. Wah. Before it could react, Issei appeared right above it, guns aimed downward. Issei. Jackpot. He pulled the triggers simultaneously. Bang. 2 bullets from loose and ombre tore through its skull, sending brain matter splattering across the warehouse floor. As the lifeless body collapsed, Issei spun his pistols one last time before holstering them with a smirk. Issei. Game over. With a flick of his trench coat, he turned away, already thinking about where to collect his payment. Suddenly, 8 magic circles appeared in the warehouse, each one glowing with divine energy. The insignia on them was unmistakable. They belonged to the Vatican Church. From the first 7 circles, elite exorcists emerged, their holy swords gleaming under the dim light. From the 8th, Eva Redgrave stepped forth, her presence distinct from the others. Without hesitation, the 7 exorcists lunged at Issei, their blades aimed to cut him down in a coordinated assault. Issei. Ah, shy. Before he could react, they piled onto him, their combined force threatening to overwhelm him. But in an instant, his body surged with power. A pulse of crimson energy erupted from him as he activated his devil trigger, sending the exorcists flying in all directions. As soon as they hit the ground, he reverted to his base form, shaking his head in irritation. Issei. Let me guess, Michael, the love child of the biblical god, sent you here to reclaim rebellion. Yeah, I already figured as much. Your scent and aura gave you away. You're not even human. Well. Except for this beauty over here. His eyes flicked toward Eva, who tensed at his words but held her ground. With a smirk, Issei drew rebellion and raised it over his shoulder. His voice rang through the warehouse. Swordmaster. Before the exorcists could recover, he dashed forward. His first target barely had time to react before Issei drove Rebellion straight through his chest with a stinger, impaling him instantly. The exorcist coughed blood, his holy blade slipping from his grasp before his body crumpled. The others hesitated for only a moment before they attacked again, but Issei was already moving. He spun on his heel, slashing horizontally with prop shredder, his blade carving through 2 more exorcists in a single motion. Their bodies split apart before they could even scream. Eva's eyes widened in horror. "Eva. Stop. These are my comrades." She rushed forward, attempting to block Issei's next strike, but he weaved around her effortlessly. He flicked his wrist, sending Rebellion into a vertical spin, cleaving through another exorcist's skull with a single brutal swing. A desperate exorcist tried to take advantage of Eva's interference, raising his holy sword for a downward strike. Issei caught it effortlessly with his bare hand, crushing the blade between his fingers before shoving Rebellion through the exorcist's throat. "Issei. You're way too slow." The remaining 2 exorcists faltered, fear creeping into their expressions. Issei tilted his head, sighing. "Issei. You should have never come here." Without warning, he activated Drive, sending a shockwave of pure demonic energy through Rebellion. The sheer force obliterated the last 2 exorcists, their bodies reduced to nothing as the warehouse shook from the impact. The only one left standing was Eva. She trembled, gripping her sword tightly as she stared at the carnage before her. The scent of burning flesh filled the air, and the weight of what had just happened sank into her chest like a stone. "Eva. No. This isn't possible." Her comrades, no, the people she thought were her comrades were dead. But why? Why had they gone down so easily? Why had their bodies turned to ash like devils? Issei let out a low chuckle, resting Rebellion on his shoulder as he turned to face her fully. "Issei. TSK, TSK, TSK. You didn't even know, did you?" Eva's grip on her sword tightened, her breathing ragged. "Issei. Those weren't your comrades, sweetheart. They were devils in disguise. Guess Michael sent them in blind not knowing they were devils in disguise, huh?" Her heart pounded as doubt and horror twisted inside her. "Eva. No. No, that can't be." Issei shrugged. "Issei. Believe whatever you want. Either way, it's just you and me now." The warehouse fell silent, save for the faint crackling of demonic energy still lingering in the air. But something in Eva snapped. Rage, grief, and unwavering duty surged through her like wildfire. With a sharp breath, she tossed her holy sword to the ground, summoning her last resort weapons Yuan and Yuri, twin holy blades gleaming with sacred light. Their presence crackled with divine power, reacting to her fury. Without hesitation, she lunged at Issei, her speed almost instantaneous. Her first strike came from the left, a sweeping slash with Yuan, while Yuri followed from below in a rising arc. But Issei was faster. He deflected both blades with Rebellion, the impact sending sparks flying. "Eva. It doesn't matter. My mission, my very soul commands me to reclaim Rebellion. You heretic stray." Issei merely chuckled, his smirk never fading. "Issei. My. A brave one. Unlike those weaklings I cut down earlier." He pushed back against her assault, forcing her to retreat a few steps before immediately pressing the attack. He slashed downward, forcing her to dodge, then spun with a lunar phase, sending Rebellion in a vicious circular arc. She barely managed to parry, but the force sent her skidding backward. Not giving her a moment to recover, Issei dashed forward, launching a rapid million stab sequence. Eva gritted her teeth, crossing her blades in an X shape to block the relentless thrusts. Sparks flew as metal clashed, her arms trembling under the sheer force of his attacks. But she refused to falter. Twisting her body, she flipped over him and retaliated with Judgment Slash, sending a crescent wave of divine energy his way. Issei smirked and casually swatted the energy wave aside, but that brief moment was all Eva needed. She dashed in, slashing at his side. He twisted just in time to avoid a fatal wound, but the blade cut through his coat, drawing a thin line of blood. His smirk widened. "Issei. Heh. Not bad. But let's kick things up a notch, shall we?" His aura exploded outward as crimson lightning crackled around him. His form shifted, muscles tensing as demonic power surged through his veins. His eyes glowed a hellish red. Devil trigger. With a snarl, Issei dashed forward at blinding speed. Eva barely had time to react before his clawed hand gripped her face, slamming her into the warehouse floor with enough force to send cracks splintering outward. She gasped in pain, but before she could recover, he lifted her by the throat and flung her into the air. Then came the real punishment. Launching himself upward, he spun violently, executing Tombstone Spiral, striking her midair with a devastating axe kick. She plummeted back to the ground, coughing blood upon impact. But she didn't let herself stay down. "Eva. I won't lose." Forcing herself up, she activated Sanctus Renum, golden divine energy bursting from her body like a second wind. Her speed doubled. In an instant, she was behind Issei, slicing across his back before he could react. He growled in irritation, spinning with Helm Breaker, but she dodged with a perfectly timed backflip. The battle raged on, Eva darting around him like a relentless tempest. She struck with a combination of Astra Drive and Seraphic Blitz, her twin blades carving through the air with deadly precision. Issei, forced on the defensive, blocked and countered, but for the first time, cracks appeared in his confidence. Then, she saw her opening. She feinted left, forcing him to block, then twisted mid-motion, bringing both blades down with all her might. EVA. Divine Ascension. A golden explosion erupted as her swords connected, launching Issei across the warehouse like a ragdoll. He crashed into the far wall, the impact shaking the entire structure. His body slumped, unmoving. His devil trigger dissipated. For the first time since the battle began, silence fell. Eva stood there, panting, blades trembling in her grip. Slowly, she stepped forward, warily approaching Issei's unmoving form. His body was wrecked, his arms limp, his eyes barely open. He couldn't move. He couldn't even speak. She had won. Eva didn't hesitate. The moment she saw Issei weakened and unable to move, rage overtook her. With a fierce battle cry, she rushed forward, gripping his face with both hands, before slamming him into the warehouse floor with bone-shattering force. The ground cracked beneath the impact, dust and debris scattering from the sheer power of the blow. Her breath was ragged, her eyes burning with fury. She hated devils. She loathed them with every fiber of her being. And the thought of working alongside them, of being tricked by them, it made her blood boil. Without a shred of hesitation, she summoned Yuan and Yuri once more, their divine glow illuminating the dimly lit warehouse. Then, she began stabbing. 1, 2, 3. The blades pierced Issei's torso repeatedly, carving deep bloody wounds into his body. Each strike was fueled by her hatred, her frustration, and her unwavering faith. Eva. Die. Die, you filthy heretic. Blood splattered across her armor, across the warehouse floor, and over her face as she stabbed him again and again. Issei's devil trigger form flickered, struggling to hold on, but with each stab, it became weaker and weaker. His demonic energy wavered, flickering back to his human form. With one final brutal stab, Eva drove her blade into his stomach, twisting it before pulling it out in a spray of crimson. She dismissed her twin swords, breathing heavily as she stared at his mangled body. It wasn't enough. Raising her hand, she channeled her magic, forming a massive iron crucifix behind her. The air crackled with energy as the enormous structure materialized, its dark metal gleaming ominously. She grabbed Issei's body, lifting him effortlessly, and with all her strength, threw him against the crucifix. A sickening crack echoed through the warehouse as his back slammed into the cold metal, his body going limp. His arms splayed out wide, and before he could react, Eva raised her hand and summoned a barrage of metal nails. One by one, she threw them into his palms and feet, each nail piercing straight through flesh and bone. Thunk. His left hand was impaled. Thunk. His right hand followed. Thunk. Both feet were nailed down, his body now completely crucified against a massive iron cross. Blood trickled down from the fresh wounds, staining the metal beneath him. Issei's eyes fluttered weakly, his body struggling to regenerate. He wanted to say something, to fight back, but he couldn't. His limbs were unresponsive. His devil trigger had completely faded. Eva stepped back, her eyes cold, her breathing steady. This was it. The final blow. Summoning rebellion, she raised the massive demonic sword above her head. The same sword Issei had fought so hard to protect. With a single powerful throw, she launched rebellion straight at him. The blade pierced his chest, cutting straight into his heart. The impact shook the crucifix, the force driving the sword deeper and deeper, until the hilt was the only thing visible. Issei's body jerked, his eyes widening for a brief moment before the light in them faded. Blood dripped from his lips, his head slumping forward. Silence. He was dead. Eva turned her back, her gaze falling upon the corpses of her fallen comrades. But as she looked closer, her stomach twisted in realization these weren't her allies. They were devils in disguise. Then, suddenly, a chuckle. A deep familiar voice echoed through the air. Issei. Getting better. Her eyes widened in shock. She spun around, her heart pounding. He was still alive. Even after being crucified, even with a sword lodged in his chest, Issei Hyoudou was still standing. He let out a breath, then smirked as he began to pull his arms free from the cross, the sound of tearing flesh eerily calm compared to the brutal act. Issei. I'd even go as far as to say that I've underestimated your. With a powerful push, he ripped himself away from the crucifix, his body landing gracefully, rebellion still impaled through his torso. Issei. Abilities. He stood there, completely unfazed, his crimson eyes glinting in the dim light. Eva took a step back, unable to hide her shock. This wasn't normal. Eva. You're not human. Are you? Nor a normal kind of devil. Still smirking, Issei reached for rebellion, gripping the hilt with one hand. He slowly pulled the massive sword from his chest, inch by inch, the blade slick with his blood. Yet, with each passing second, his wounds began to heal at an unnatural rate. Issei. Your supposed comrades. And me. With a final pull, he freed the sword from his body, the gaping wound sealing almost instantly, as if it had never been there in the first place. He casually stabbed Rebellion into the ground, resting his hand on the hilt. Issei. As for you. You're different. The way you use magic. It's familiar. As if I've encountered it before. In my past life. Eva's brows furrowed at his words. His past life. What the hell was he talking about? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. There was no way she'd entertain the ramblings of a heretic devil. Eva. I know better than to trust and listen to a devil like you. Death and destruction are the core of your nature. Issei only chuckled, unbothered by her words. He reached back, placing Rebellion onto his back with a smooth motion. Issei. Oh, I know all about a devil's nature. His smirk widened as he leaned in slightly. Issei. Thing is. I'm not one of them. That ticked off Eva instantly. Her curiosity burned, but she refused to entertain his mind games. She needed to know if he was bluffing. If he was still injured. In a blur of motion, she lunged forward, gripping his collar and tearing through the inner layer of his clothing. What she saw stopped her in her tracks. Her breath hitched. Her face flushed red. Heaven helped her. Beneath the torn fabric was a toned, muscular torso, his body sculpted with defined six-pack abs, his frame exuding sheer power and masculinity. She froze, her mind stalling as an unfamiliar heat crept up her neck. Issei smirked, completely unfazed. Issei. Ripped an irresistible dreamboat, I know. He leaned in slightly, amusement flickering in his crimson eyes. Issei. But you still can't just go around tearing a guy's clothes off. That's kinda rude, you know. Eva instinctively stepped back, her entire body shaking as she turned her back on Issei. Her face was burning, her hands flying up to cover it as she desperately tried to regain her composure. Eva. There's no way. There's no way a heretic like him could look this attractive. Her own words sounded absurd even in her head, but the undeniable truth remained. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she absolutely hated it. But before she could fully snap herself out of it, Issei took the opportunity, his body tensing for a leap, before vaulting himself onto one of the warehouse's steel support beams. The sudden movement made Eva jolt back to her senses. Eva. Where the hell do you think you're going? Issei let out a mocking laugh, his tone dripping with amusement as he balanced effortlessly on the beam above. Issei. Tell me, exorcist girl, what's your name? Eva hesitated, taken aback by the sudden question. Why would a devil want to know her name? Was this some kind of ploy? A trick to make her let her guard down? Her mind raced through possible motives, but in the end, she made a choice. Eva. Eva. Eva Redgrave. She narrowed her eyes. Eva. You must be Issei Hyoudou, the faction alliance's former pillar. The one they now call the Fallen Pillar. But honestly, your title doesn't concern me. Issei's smirk deepened, amusement flickering in his eyes. Issei. Interesting. He tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing her. Issei. Gotta say, you're the first one in a long time to actually make me sweat in a fight. Hell, your beauty alone was enough to distract me for a second there. Eva's face flushed red. The devil just complimented her. A Vatican's exorcist. Her breath caught in her throat as she clenched her fists. Eva. Hey, you can't just say things like that, you damn heretic. Issei merely chuckled, his confidence unwavering. Then, with a flourish, he reached into his coat, his movement smooth and deliberate. Before Eva could react, he tossed something toward her. A single red rose. Eva instinctively caught it, her mind going blank as she stared at the delicate petals. Issei, consider that a token of my respect, Eva. He turned his back to her, resting a hand on the rebellion's hilt. Issei. You're a beautiful lady, if you ask me. But bad news, this sword isn't going anywhere. It belongs in the hands of its rightful owner. He glanced at her over his shoulder, flashing a devilish grin. Issei. And that rightful owner is me. Before she could respond, Issei whipped out Umbra, his black pistol, and aimed it at the ceiling. With a rapid barrage of gunfire, he shattered a portion of the warehouse's roof supports, causing debris to collapse between them. Using the distraction, he leapt up, his movements fluid and effortless, disappearing through the newly created gap. Eva stood frozen in place, the rose still clutched in her hand. Her mind was a storm of emotions. Her heart was pounding. Her face was hotter than the fires of hell itself. And worst of all, she wasn't sure why. Her grip on the rose tightened as she stared at the empty space where Issei had stood moments ago. Eva. Eva Redgrave. What the hell are you thinking? Snap out of it. She shook her head furiously, as if trying to force the thoughts out. Eva. There's no way I find that damn heretic attractive. There's no way a compliment from a devil made me feel. She cut herself off, unable to finish the thought. Instead, she turned her gaze to the corpses of her supposed comrades, the ones that had been devils in disguise. A heavy sigh escaped her lips. Eva. How am I even supposed to report this to Father Redgrave? Her fingers brushed against the petals of the rose. Eva. I don't even know if Lord Michael will be disappointed in me for failing to retrieve the rebellion. Her shoulders tensed, her frustration boiling. Eva. But damn it, that damn heretic made me. She groaned, running a hand through her hair before turning away from the wreckage. Meanwhile, outside the warehouse. Issei landed smoothly, walking toward his parked Ninja ZX6R. His phone buzzed in his pocket, signaling a new notification. With a sigh, he pulled it out and checked the screen. It was a message from Neven. His brows furrowed slightly before tapping to open it. And immediately, he regretted it. A picture. The very questionable picture of Neven lying naked on a bed, her expression sultry. The message below read. Neven. Is the job done, my glorious knight? Come home and let's have fun. Issei's face deadpanned. Issei. Neven, you really are a die-hard horny woman. With a heavy sigh, he locked his phone, climbed onto his motorcycle, and revved the engine. As much as he wanted to ignore her antics, he knew she wouldn't stop. And that was the real problem. Issei then started up the engine of his Ninja ZX6R, the powerful roar of the bike echoing through the empty streets. He pulled in the clutch, shifting smoothly into first gear before releasing it slowly, allowing the machine to lurch forward. With a quick flick of his wrist, he revved the engine aggressively, the tires screeching against the pavement as he accelerated out of the alleyway. The night air rushed past him, the familiar adrenaline of the ride settling into his veins. But just as he turned the corner. Shunk. A sword came plunging down from above, embedding itself directly into his bike's gas tank. His eyes widened. Boom. The entire motorcycle erupted into a fiery explosion, the force of the blast sending flames and debris shooting out in every direction. A wall of searing heat engulfed Issei's body, the flames licking at his form as the bike was completely obliterated. For a few moments, there was nothing but fire. And then, through the raging inferno, a figure emerged. Issei walked out of the explosion, his body coated in a thick layer of black ash, his clothes tattered and singed. His face was twisted into an expression of pure, unfiltered rage. Issei. Who the hell did that? His voice echoed through the street, laced with fury as his burning red eyes scanned the area. The answer came instantly. Within the flames, the sword that had destroyed his bike suddenly levitated, crackling with raw arcane energy, as if responding to an unseen command. Then, without warning, it launched itself backward, returning to the grasp of its true owner. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping forward with a slow, calculated gait. Their appearance was imposing, a dark armored warrior with glowing energy coursing through their body. Their suit was sleek, black, and form-fitting, reinforced with layered plating that shimmered beneath the dim streetlights. Along their armor, luminous veins of energy pulsed in an eerie blue-green glow, giving them an almost supernatural aura as if their very being was infused with raw power. In their grip, they held a massive sword, its blade glowing with an ethereal blue light, crackling with unstable energy, as if eager to devour whatever it touched. The large flowing cape in deep purple and crimson billowed behind them, adding a dramatic weight to their already overwhelming presence. Issei's eyes narrowed as he studied the newcomer. The way they carried themselves. The arrogance in their stance. The sheer power radiating off of them. He exhaled slowly, rolling his stiff shoulders before brushing off the ash from his jacket. Issei. What the? His grip tightened on rebellion, his instincts kicking in immediately. Whoever this guy was. He wasn't here for small talk. Issei broke the silence, his stance firm as he pulled rebellion from his back, the massive blade gleaming under the dim streetlights. With a single motion, he pointed it directly at the mysterious devil knight standing before him. Issei. Who are you? One of Sirzich's servants. The armored figure remained still for a moment before a distorted eerie laugh echoed from within their helmet. It wasn't a sound of amusement, it was a sound of mockery. Me? A pawn to that false ruler of the underworld. A servant to that wretched Gremory family. The air around them crackled with energy as they took a slow step forward, their massive blade glowing ominously. I am Nilo Angelo, Knight of Lord Pexinox, the true ruler of the underworld. The name sent a shockwave through Issei's mind. Nilo Angelo. This wasn't just some random devil looking for a fight. And more importantly, Pexinox. A name he had never heard before. A name that carried weight. But before he could process it fully, Nilo Angelo took another step forward, their glowing eyes locking onto him. Nilo Angelo. And you must be Issei Hyoudou. Or should I say. The air grew heavy. The flames from the wreckage of his destroyed motorcycle flickered wildly, as if reacting to the weight of the name that followed. Nilo Angelo. Sparda. Issei's grip on rebellion tightened. His jaw clenched. So, this guy knew. This wasn't just a random ambush, this was a calculated attack. Issei. Let me guess. Those exorcists that were with Red Gravier people. Nilo Angelo let out another distorted chuckle, his massive sword still aimed directly at Issei. Nilo Angelo. Indeed, Sparda. A planned ambush from the start. Though it seems that woman failed to fulfill her role. He then tilted his head slightly, his voice carrying a sick pleasure in every word he spoke. Nilo Angelo. But it does not matter. Your mere existence postpones the rise of the true ruler of the underworld. The wind howled as Nilo Angelo raised his blade, the very air around them shuddering under his sheer presence. Nilo Angelo. And my mission is simple. The glow from his weapon intensified, and with a single downward slash, the ground beneath them cracked violently. Nilo Angelo. To kill you. And take your head along with the great heavenly red dragon emperor within you as a trophy to please my lord. Issei let out a low chuckle, his free hand rolling his shoulder as if warming up. Then, with a single powerful swing, he flipped Rebellion onto his back, the sheer force generating a shockwave that extinguished the fire behind him in an instant. The alley fell into silence. Only the sound of the wind remained. Issei's lips curled into a cocky smirk. Issei. Fine. He rolled his neck, cracking it loudly before locking eyes with Nilo Angelo. Issei. You seem interesting enough. I let it slide. He then pointed Rebellion at him again, his stance shifting slightly as his energy began to build up. Issei. Hope you brought the marshmallows. A small burst of fire ignited around him as his smirk widened into a full grin. Issei. Cause I'm bringing the fire. Boss fight. Nilo Angelo. Knight of Pexinox. The moment Issei finished speaking, Nilo Angelo vanished into black mist. Issei's instinct screamed. A shockwave erupted from behind him. Trickster style. Phase step. At the very last second, Issei twisted his body and vanished in a crimson blur, reappearing a few feet away as Nilo's colossal sword carved through empty air. The Devil Knight didn't relent, he teleported above, bringing his massive glowing blade down like a guillotine. Royal Guard. Force block. Issei raised Rebellion one-handed, bracing it with Devil Arm Drag, which shifted into a massive clawed gauntlet to reinforce his guard. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield, cracking the ground beneath them. Issei. Oh, you got some weight behind that. Cute. Swordmaster style. Drive and overdrive. Issei twisted Rebellion, channeling energy into the blade before unleashing a massive shockwave / drive. A blazing red arc slammed into Nilo Angelo, forcing him back. Before he could recover, two more shockwaves followed in quick succession overdrive. Nilo barely had time to raise his sword to block, skidding back under the force. Nilo Angelo. Impressive. But not enough. Raising his left hand, Nilo summoned a storm of phantom blades, each one crackling with ethereal power as they shot toward Issei like hunting missiles. Gunslinger style. Umbra Chaos Shot and DTRAIG Flare Kick. Issei twirled Umbra, unleashing rapid-fire hellfire bullets, shattering the incoming blades one by one. One, however, got through. But the spin, Issei's right greave flared, Devil Arm Drag forming a clawed draconic footplate as he kicked the incoming blade, shattering it mid-air. Drag. You're getting slow, Issei. Issei. TCH, I'll show you slow. Nilo teleported again, appearing directly in front of Issei with a charged thrust. Trickster style. Sky step dodge. Issei side dashed mid-air, vanishing before landing on thin air itself, standing as if there was an invisible platform. Swordmaster style. Aota combo, Rebellion plus Drake Greaves. Using his sky-high position, Issei dived down, unleashing a spinning Helmbreaker slash. Nilo blocked. But Issei instantly transitioned into a brutal 3-hit kick combo, utilizing Drake's Greaves. The final kick sent Nilo crashing into the ground like a meteor, shaking the entire battlefield. Phase 2. The Black Knight's Wrath. The sky darkened as Nilo rose from the crater, his armor cracked, but his power surging. Nilo Angelo. I shall not be denied my glory. With a raise of his blade, he summoned 6 massive phantom greatswords, burning with hellfire, before sending them crashing toward Issei like meteors. Instead of dodging. Trickster style. Blazing dash. Issei ran straight into them. Using the momentum, his greaves ignited with draconic flames, propelling him through the falling swords at blinding speeds. Just as he closed the distance. Swordmaster style. Raging Fury, Rebellion plus Drake Gauntlet. Issei flipped mid-air, swinging Rebellion in a brutal downward slash, but as Nilo raised his sword to counter. Issei's Devil Arm Gauntlet morphed into a massive clawed fist, which he followed up with a devastating punch to Nilo's chest, sending him flying. Phase 3. Final clash. Nilo staggered, his form flickering with unstable power. Nilo Angelo. I will not be bested by the likes of you. A massive portal of hellfire opened above. From it, a colossal spectral greatsword descended, its sheer size warping the air around it. Issei whistled. Issei. Oh, so we're playing that game now. The great sword descended like a meteor. Instead of dodging. Trickster style. Lightning step. Issei blinked dashed onto the falling sword, running along its massive blade before launching himself straight at Nilo Angelo. Swordmaster style. Final execution. As he closed the distance, Issei channeled energy into rebellion, the blade flaring red hot with draconic power. With a smirk. Issei. Jackpot. He brought the sword down in one final devastating slash. Crack. Nilo froze. He was sent flying, his massive demonic blade slipping from his grasp as he crashed into the ground, defeated. Issei let out a breath, resting rebellion on his shoulder as he walked forward. Issei. Well, looks like your lord is gonna be pissed when he finds out one of his best knights completely botched the mission. But before he could say anything else, a sudden surge of purple demonic energy erupted around Nilo Angelo's body. His bright yellow eyes flared violently as he gripped his helmeted head, screaming in agony. The way he twisted and convulsed, it wasn't the pain of defeat, it was something deeper, something forced. As if something was punishing him. A magic. A spell. A brutal method of control. Nilo Angelo. That damn Pexinox, ah. EVA. I. The name EVA barely escaped his lips before the ground beneath him glowed with a massive dark blue demonic magic circle. The sigils pulsed violently, and in an instant he was gone. Only his massive demonic sword remained, half buried in the cracked earth. A silence fell over the battlefield. Issei slowly approached the sword, gripping the hilt with one hand as he infused his magic into it. With a faint glow, the blade disappeared into his inventory. He let out a sigh, rolling his shoulders. Then he turned. His motorcycle was a pile of wreckage. Issei. Well. There goes my ride. Shaking his head, he reached into his coat and pulled out his phone to call for backup. Only to see a notification from Niven. He clicked it. A new message. And an attachment. Another fully nude selfie. Issei sighed. Issei. Niven. You really are a die-hard horny woman. The entire scene suddenly transitioned into a glass with the last image of the scene and then. Bang. 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 The glass became shattered, transitioning into the word. Mission 3. End. Mission rank. S. That's it guys. Until the author add more chapters. Take care.